Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to have back on the show once again Satanic ritual abuse, mind control, Stargate Project, Freemason, Jesuit, and organized abuse survivor, overcomer, and whistleblower, loving mother, content creator, faithful servant to the Most High, gardener, floral design extraordinaire, singer and songwriter, poet, poetry reader, creative writer, and someone I'm so grateful to call my friend, Kadaya. In case you missed any of Kadaya's incredible episodes she did here on this show, or if you're new here, here's a brief synopsis of her testimony as well as some things we will be talking about today. From the tenderest years of childhood, Kadaya faced unimaginable darkness, trauma-based mind control rooted in MONARCH programming involving things like electroshock, near drowning, and ritualistic horrors designed to fracture the soul and form dissociative identities. Whisked away to Masonic lodges, churches, the Vatican, and secret spaces for advanced Stargate programming, her extraordinary intelligence and spiritual gifts were weaponized by shadowy forces, the Freemasons, Jesuits, and elite bloodlines for sinister purposes. Outwardly, her life appeared as a picture-perfect childhood, but beneath the veil, her fragmented parts endured unspeakable torment, often cloaked as covert operations. Yet the scars found on and within her body, dissociative episodes, memory loss, chronic skin afflictions, marks and scars, told a story of profound suffering. Through unwavering prayer, deep faith in Yahweh, disciplined fasting, and the healing vibrations of 444 hertz worship music, Kadaya witnessed divine miracles, skin restored, health renewed, and a spirit empowered to rise. Armed with this sacred strength, she boldly confronted her handlers and perpetrators, shattering the invisible chains that bound her mind and soul. Freedom came, however, at a staggering price. Betrayal from family, friends, and even her husband, who obtained a protection order, stripping her of her precious children, her home, and her stability. Enduring relentless gang stalking and targeting, she found sanctuary with Restoration in Christ Ministries, where deep programming and memory integration became pathways to wholeness. Through a flawed system separated her from her beloved children, Kadaya's unquenchable fire burns brighter. She battles tirelessly for their liberation and shines a bright light on hidden systemic evils. In recent episodes we've done together, we've journeyed deeply into Kadaya's powerful testimony, from the depths of programming and rituals, signs and symbols hidden in plain sight, through family trials and breakthrough freedom, to profound healing and beyond. If you haven't yet, I warmly invite you guys to revisit those episodes for the full foundation before or after this episode. On today's episode, Kadaya will be reviewing and unveiling even more occulted knowledge and personal testimony through disclosure, including personal updates on her life, being used as a remote womb, neurolinguistic programming, triggers in the news, presidential rememberings, the Black Awakening, uniting survivors out of isolation, reuniting with ghosts from her past, more visuals and graphics that will be shown on the screen, and even some poetry readings from Kadaya's incredible collection of poems that have been created and written through her healing process. You won't want to miss a minute of this episode. In typical Kadaya fashion, every moment will be gripping, eye-opening, inspiring, and informative all at once. Kadaya's unbreakable spirit resounds like a trumpet across the heavens as she states, You are never alone. Your voice matters. Your healing is possible, and your suffering will never define the magnificent destiny awaiting you. She emerges as a radiant warrioress of light, a fierce guardian of truth, whose every step shakes the foundation of darkness. With unyielding passion, she encourages us all to awaken and unite in her holy crusade, to forge a glorious new world where no child ever knows the chains of enslavement, where innocence is fiercely protected, and where the boundless, triumphant love of the divine forever vanquishes every shadow of evil. Her extraordinary journey composes a breathtaking symphony of miraculous healing, breathtaking redemption, and eternal restoration, a blazing, eternal flame of hope that shatters the deepest night, igniting countless souls to rise in unstoppable power. Kadaya calls you to reclaim your divine birthright, to stand tall in unbreakable faith, and to shine your light so brightly that the darkness flees forever. Together, hand in hand, heart to heart, we shall storm the gates of injustice and herald the golden dawn of total freedom, unshakable justice, and eternal resounding victory. The light has already won. Time just hasn't caught up yet. And Kadaya is the proof. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, woman of God, survivor, warrior, fierce mama bear, family court reform activist, walking miracle, anti-child abuse and survivor advocate, and a woman on an incredible mission to equip other survivors with what to expect when getting out through the power and hope of faith in Christ. The one, the only, Kadaya. Kadaya, it is so great to have you back again today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Surprise.
Surprise, you guys.
I do have a face.
She
I'm
has
not
a
an AI.
When Kadaya said she was going to show her face today, I purposely didn't include it in the introduction and thought it would be fun to kind of spring it on you guys. So if you guys are listening and not watching, you guys should head over to YouTube and watch, because Kadaya is showing her face for the first time. This is a really monumental step for her or any survivor to take. She's done multiple episodes on the show and has had to remain anonymous for a lot of reasons for her identity. But today she's going to show her face, and I'm really excited about that. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me back. I've been looking so forward to it. There's so much. There's so much I want to share. And so I would encourage, I guess, anybody listening, if you haven't caught up on the last few episodes, just for context, you could go back and watch. They're pretty long, but I do have a couple of pictures to share today. And so if you are not watching or listening to this interview on a video format, that's okay. I'll still explain it and you'll still understand what's going on. But it is helpful if you're able to switch over to YouTube or Rumble and a platform where you're able to view the photos. That will be helpful. But you don't have to sit down and watch the whole thing.
Although
Just
you
want to
should.
mention it. You should, yeah. Well, I like to do other things while I'm listening to podcasts often. I'll do chores or laundry or lay in my bed, different things like that.
Yeah, I
But
hear you. I do that a lot too whenever I'm listening to podcasts. And I don't really watch them a lot either. I'm usually driving or I'm listening like while I'm at work or something. But I think in certain contexts, especially with some of these stories, especially whenever you can see visuals, because a lot of this stuff people are hearing for the first time, and it can be so hard if somebody hasn't gone through it, or even people who have, to contend with it and then to try to visualize something that's so foreign to what we've grown up to believe can happen, and then even what's capable of happening. And I think visuals are a really great way, whether it's art, whether it's actual photos, and you've shown your art in previous episodes as well. I think that there's a really great opportunity to educate through photography and art, and to showcase the unimaginable and to make it something palatable, and survivors are finding so many creative ways to do that through poems, through books, through podcasts, any different way, verbal, nonverbal. There's so many different ways we can help people understand kind of the depths of these stories and the different nuances that go along with it, either during childhood or after. And of course, your stories, you personally, there's no shortage of events that happen to you as a child that are just so devastating. But as a lot of us know, this doesn't just stop just because the childhood abuse does. The way that abuse perpetuates sort of evolves, turns into things like gang stalking, and it's really difficult. So I'm really grateful that you're here sharing and that you're in a space where you can do this. And we definitely would love to get caught up on what you've been up to and any updates that you have for us.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, it's been a difficult season, but it has also been nothing short of amazing. You mentioned in the incredible intro that you wrote for me about the season that I'm coming out of, where I was with a family who took me in for a year and a half. So about 3 months ago, I had to relocate because I discovered that I was being accessed at that location. And that was uh, a tricky situation to get out of, but through just prayer and the goodness and faithfulness of God, I was able to clear a path of escape. And He almost literally airlifted me out of there. And so I've had to take up kind of more of a militaristic soldier's mindset the past 3 months or so. But man, Yah has been so faithful to provide what I need. And I just want to say right off the bat, thank you to those of you who have pitched in and donated to my GoFundMe, because you have clothed me, you have fed me. This relocation resulted in the loss of all of my belongings once again. But because of those of you who pitched in, I was able to afford to relocate. I was able to afford a plane ticket. And I could not have done that if it weren't for the listeners who were stirred to help. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, truly, because it helps me, it helps my children, and it helps the mission to help other survivors that I feel I am bushwhacking through in a rather unique way. And so you are the true religion. Those of you out there who have helped me or have helped other people in need, the oppressed, the afflicted, those in bondage, those in captivity, the poor, the needy, the orphan and the widow, according to the Bible. If we visit them and we help them in the time of their distress, that is what our true religion is. And so I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because there are so few. It's really difficult to find the church nowadays, because so much of the church is a veneer for a lot of the satanic ritual abuse, for CIA networks, and things like that. And so I, took a leap of faith, and shared my story publicly. And I have not been disappointed. So thank you. I'll tell a little bit about how I discovered I was still being accessed. Um, and that was through a couple of different avenues. One from the outside, but the one I want to talk to from the inside is through neurolinguistic programming. And so I experienced a sudden deterioration of my health once again and my ability to function. And I noticed that I was rapid switching between identities or personalities more often. And it became relevant to me that there were some patterns that were contributing to the perpetuation of programming that I was working really hard to try and dissolve in order to heal and recover, and live a functional life and fight for my children. And so I was praying for help. I said, Abba, I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere else to go. And a couple days later, I was reconnected with another survivor that I had prayed to be reconnected with when I first remembered the survivor, when I first came out of mind control. And so, um, just bear with me, bear with me as I say this, because I want to try to stay present without switching. And I've been encountering a little bit of a stumbling block this week with dissociative seizures. And so thank you for those of you who are listening, and just bearing with me and having grace while I get my thoughts together. But at the beginning of the year, I had remembered I had had a flashback last year of a survivor in one of the programs that I was in a location that I believe to be Lincoln Park. And this survivor was a few years younger than me. I was maybe roughly around 16 years old. This survivor was maybe about 13, but looked a lot younger. And there was a Hunger Games, almost Roman Colosseum type scenario that we were thrust into at this age with multiple other children, young teenagers, youth. I'll say youth around that age. And I don't recall the actual events because they were so traumatic. I remember a lot of blood. I remember a lot of stuff pertaining to injections. And I remember this survivor's little face and hanging on to him to protect him. And we were sitting on the floor and just clinging to one another. And I just remember I had just like this mother-like protection, and I just will never forget the scream of horror on his face. And so this memory had flitted in and out of my vision a couple times throughout this year, and I just said, Abba, like, who is this boy? I would love to see if he's okay, because I've just never forgotten that horror-stricken scream and the feeling of hopelessness that I had, that I wasn't actually able to protect him fully from what was going on. All we could do was shake and comfort each other on the floor while this disgusting theater was being enacted. And so fast forward over a year later, as I'm praying to Yah for help um, to go somewhere safe, he reconnects me with the survivor from Lincoln Park, like by an absolute miracle. And this is why it's so amazing that we are vocal about our testimonies online, because this has happened with more than one person where we have discovered shared perpetrators. People have been reunited with their training partners in these CIA programs, and it's so awesome and it's so validating for our testimonies, because we need to be able to come together and put these pieces together and also grieve together and heal together, because um, being with somebody else who has been through not just a similar story as yours, but through some of the same events, it can be a really, really powerful thing. And so I was I had reconnected with this survivor, and I just realized in the moment who that I had reconnected with by divine providence with the survivor I had prayed to connect with earlier. And I'm trying to get to the point here, because there's so much that's gone on, and so much that I want to say, and so many details. But the main point is, um, I began to ask him questions of what I was remembering, just to test to see if he had similar memories. And he did, right down to his haircut, the color of his shoes at that age, I said, like, were you skinny? Like, were you really thin around this age? Like, and he sent me a picture because he was given puberty blockers, right, in these programs. So he was. And so then the floodgates of memories, and the connection through these shared events in the program, really those gates were open now. Um, and so as this is going on, I'm actively being accessed through hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. But because I have this person on the phone with me while this is happening, he is seeing that I am having sabotage programming being set off, and he's recording it so that I can hear um, my personality switches. I can hear and listen back after there has been amnesia, that something has been activated. And so this survivor that I reconnected with spent about a week and a half on the phone with me almost 24/7 because I was being so severely debilitated, and I needed to hear for myself what was happening around me. So he's playing back these clips to me, and I'm like, okay, well, I've been praying to get out of here, and so but I don't know where to go. I don't know how to do this safely, but I had just enough money through those who had donated to my GoFundMe to buy a plane ticket to relocate to where this survivor was, where I had access to my own space, and a roof over my head. They're limited to no income, but like safety. And so I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, how cool is it that God would reconnect me with a survivor that I tried to protect as a teenager? And then you fast forward 25 years, and he's now doing the same thing for me. So he led me by the hand because packing is a really big trigger for a lot of survivors, especially for me. Moving, packing, relocating, it's a whole thing. And so he was actually able to stay on the phone with me while and see me all the way through the airport to my location because I was that dysfunctional from the programming that was still being accessed. So I was able to get to my location safely. So that was a miracle.
That's absolutely amazing. We were talking
Yeah.
before about, it can be so terrifying to share your testimony, and the things that you think about when you're ready to disclose are all the worst case scenarios, all those nerves, with the hope and glimmer of the light at the end of the tunnel getting closer, but that, of course,
Hmm.
it's hard to overcome all those fears, and thinking about just the worst possible outcomes of speaking out that can happen. And it's amazing. I know not everybody's ready to speak out, but when that time is right and there's the ability to, I hear just constantly that it's done more good than bad. That of course there's going to be maybe elevated levels of spiritual warfare. There might be targeting, but you're ultimately connecting and putting truth out into the universe. And, it's that in itself is like a combatant to all the silence that they need in order to survive. Like every single voice pushes up against them and helps break that wall down between exposure. And so I love that you speaking out and everything that you've lost, that you're letting go of things, and fighting for the things that you've had to let go of and that have been taken from you. And in the meantime, before you get the things back that you're meant to get back and the justice that you are so deserved and that is coming, you now have the ability to intercept the other things on your path that are meant to help you get to your final destination, to help you with your mission. So absolutely incredible story. And especially
It
that was
is.
the person that you were praying to connect with.
Well, it was so such a miracle that I had to ask myself, like, is this another setup?
Yeah, I
Because
would.
is
Yeah,
this another
totally.
setup? Because it would be really easy to take two kids from the same program who have similar programming and put them together and have them destroy one another. You know what I mean? Like you put
Yes.
two deltas in one location, right? Like, but it hasn't. That's not. I mean, who knows? Like, it's possible, right? It's always possible that the enemy has meant something for evil, but that God means it for good. So
Yes.
I'm making such a concerted effort more now than ever to really limit the credit that I give to the enemy. It's really easy to do that. I've fallen into that big time, because you're immersed in so much darkness when you're trying to come out of it, and you're learning and you're trying to educate yourself, and it can be really easy to get swallowed up, really easy to get bogged down, and to allow the enemy to inflate the darkness, to inflate the enemy, to inflate the devil, these evil systems, to look bigger than they actually are. And so that's something that I've been learning to grow in, and I've been learning to balance, because we do have one foot in this mire. And we have to, in order to be able to reach other survivors, and pull them out. But yeah, it's been really cool. I want to share a little bit more later on about some of the things that my friend and I have been planning, some of the projects that we have been working on. Um, there's a lot of stuff that is coming, that has been planned through things like the Black Awakening, which I know you've done a lot of interviews on. And we both have had that programming, and it's going to be activated very soon. And so we really, really want to encourage survivors to rally together as much as possible physically, and outside of big community platforms, because at some point those are going to go down. And we're going to need to find each other. We're going to need to share information, help each other. Everybody has something to contribute. And so I'm going to share in a little bit about some ways that you can do that, and ways that you can partner with me, if you choose to. But I think it's really, really important. And the neurolinguistic programming and the hypnosis as well, um, is something we're inundated with a lot through the media, but it's being used by more people around us than we know, especially with handlers. And one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer, of the neurolinguistic programming, philosophy, theory, and modality, his name was Bandler, Richard Bandler. And he was accused of all kinds of things, sexual abuse, I think even murder. And he was kind of known as a cult leader. And he wrote a book called The Art of Seduction. And it's all about how to subtly manipulate those around you. Much easier to do with someone who is programmed, through certain verbal cues, especially if you have been given their little black book, from their programmer, and in so that you know how to activate certain programs that may bring out certain personalities or sabotage different things. But Richard Bandler was really instrumental in this, and he this is how I was being accessed. This is one of the ways that I was majorly being accessed, and one of the effects that it had, was the re-triggering of suicide programming. When I was actually presented with the forms to comply with assisted suicide. In Canada, the assisted suicide program through the government is called MAID, MAID. And this happened to me twice, in that year and a half, where I was presented with these forms. I was too debilitated to be able to fill them out or think through this properly. And so this person who was accessing me began to fill out the forms online. Um, and I, thankfully, by the grace of God, there was a restraint put on um, the ability to manipulate me. So I kind of just like played along just to see how far this would be taken. And eventually, a doctor was brought on board, was solicited to endorse it because I was so sick when I was in Canada. I was in and out of urgent care with seizures, different things like that. Leftover injury from strangulation, things pertaining to the cult. In Canada, it's really almost impossible to get a doctor, especially if you are in need of one trying to get help as a um, government defective mind control. And so that may have had something to do with why, but I could not get a doctor. I tried every door I could when I was in Canada. And in the end, I'm glad I wasn't able to see one because I know that the doctors are programmed to diagnose with the disease. They can't get to the root of a lot of symptoms, which is just simply trauma and programming and neural pathways that need to be rewired. Um, but I was well along the way in the process of medically assisted suicide, which was a huge unveiling for me in regards to the people that I had come to trust and share the most vulnerable parts of my life with. And I think it's pretty sick and pretty twisted and pretty demented, but it's important for us to know this because s- since I have looked into MAID, MAID in Canada, medically assisted, what is it? Medically assisted something death. Anyway, it's really obvious that a lot of people that are being sent there are not willing. They're not witting and they're not willing, but they are victims of trauma, and so it's a really scary thing to think somebody might access or activate a suicide program or a personality or identity in someone's system that is carrying that trauma that would be willing to comply with that type of decision, right? When the rest of the body and the rest of the soul, fragments of the soul are not. And so that's a really alarming and scary thing, I think. But I couldn't find a doctor to help me with my symptoms. And I was just completely unable to function. And so this person had asked their doctor if there was anything that they were able to do for me, and they went straight back to they said no, but uh, but she should be able to use medically assisted suicide without the endorsement of a doctor. And, like she kind of knew how to do it. And so I'm just kind of like allowing these things to happen around me as I'm observing them and I'm noticing them and I'm kind of like, okay, Abba, like I see what's going on here, but I need to maintain some level of dissociation because I'm not in a safe place yet. I need to get somewhere far, far, far away where nobody in the network, nobody in my former family, nobody that I ever formerly knew will come anywhere near, because I was chatting with a survivor that I've become friends with who has a shared perpetrator as me. And she was saying how much healing she received and how many memories were unlocked when she traveled to a location that was far from anybody in her family or anybody that she might have shared memories with from these locations, from these traumas. And so that's what I've been discovering is a whole new systems of parts that I was unaware of before, that I suspected that I had, have come forward with names and ages, have been willing to interact with my friend who helped to bring me here. And that's been super hard because there's a lot of grief, a lot of emotion, a lot of things that has unlocked, but it's so good and so, so important. But not everybody has the capacity or the ability to relocate in order to be able to get to that deep level of healing, in order to bring the nervous system into safety, in order to get away from any possible programmers, handlers, all of those types of things. Not everybody has that. And so that is part of what is my mission here, is to be able to create a space where survivors can come to recover. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later.
Oh my goodness, that is absolutely horrifying to hear that you were being coerced into taking your own life legally. And I've thought about scenarios with this happening and affecting our community, with this now being a thing that certain people can choose from in different countries. There was another podcast guest I've had on here that he's no longer with us, unfortunately, through other means. But before that, while he was still alive, he had shared on my podcast in one of the interviews that I did with him. His name's Kevin Sutherland. He was a good friend of mine in the UK. Just been through hell. But that was something that when he was very triggered, he went and applied for, because it was available for certain medical conditions that he had had. And in his despair, he was trying to get approved for it. And he didn't at the time. But it was just something that I was thinking, this is really dangerous for our community. It's almost like an in that they're giving survivors to do something quickly, and to make it look like it's, a choice, or because they have a medical condition. And of course, I mean, they can create anything behind the scenes with the family as to what happened and why this happened. But that was my biggest fear, was that this was going to be something that targets this community. And that is absolutely horrific, that people that were supposed to be helping you were secretly sort of doing this, unbeknownst to all of you, that you were like being used with hypnosis and NLP, like you said, to do something like that. Like, that is just like, it makes me absolutely speechless to think about. That is horrific.
It is shocking. Yeah. And yeah, that's been hard. These are people I really loved.
The betrayal.
So, yeah. Yeah, the betrayal for me, for my children.
Yes.
One of the things that Bandler, the pioneer of neurolinguistic programming, a couple of quotes by him. He said, "Brains aren't designed to get results. They go in directions. If you know how the brain works, you can set your own directions. If you don't, someone else will." Um, and so that is one of the reasons that it was important for me to depart, is because I was continuing to receive direction and instruction and counsel and therapy from these people. And I needed to figure out on my own, because here's the thing, is like, Bandler knows how the brain works. And it's all of this truth, but he's using it for insidious and evil purposes. And he also said, if you can't change people by removing something, you must create a void and then fill it. And so my experience uh, with those who were able to access me during that year and a half was that I was given um so what happened, I showed up, if you've listened to my last testimonies, everything had been stripped away from me. I had one extra outfit, nothing else, and I was effectively abandoned um at this location, with no ability to return home or pack, no money, nothing. So this void was created. My children are gone, my house is gone, my car is gone, my whole life is gone. In a way, my all of the things that we kind of wrap our identity up in, it's all gone, and now I'm in this void. um but I was given things to fill it, right? I was given equipment and aid in starting a podcast. I was given the ability to record the songs that I had written, the worship songs that I had written about my Savior. Um, many of which were poems that I had written throughout the dark valley of the 7 years preceding, as I was seeking deliverance. I was given all of this. I was given a new family. I was given all of this new stuff. So that void was created, and then that void was filled in order to leverage power, and continue to essentially handle me by putting their strings around everything that I was striving to do, create, and accomplish, so that it could then be revoked. It could then be immediately devoured if I disobeyed. And when I stopped reporting to those who I discovered were activating my programming for purposes that were not helpful, um, well, anybody accessing your programming is probably not trying to help. They've been sent, right, with the skills, tools, information, and the know-how of how to do this. But all this was taken away from me, right? Again, in order to punish me for disobedience. So the thing that I had done was I had stopped reporting, right? And I just graciously said, "Hey, thank you for your help. Thank you for taking care of me for this past year and a half. Um, I'm going to be leaving in a couple of weeks, and I'm not going to share where I'm going. This is the first time, blah 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 blah." And I just kept it really gracious, really vague, really grateful, and as peaceful as I could. And everything was taken from me again. Um, the atmosphere changed. The hostility was palpable. There was even an accusation that arose at one point, um, that I was being secretive. Um, and, just because I was a blabbermouth, right? I was programmed and conditioned to just be reporting and sharing everything that the whole therapeutic process, what I was discovering about my parts, what I was remembering. I just pulled the reins in a little bit. And that's when I saw a lot of true colors. That's when my programming really started, the sabotaging programming, the scrambling, the amnesia, the paralysis, all those things that they've installed, those were now being accessed, right? Because I was leaving, and that meant there would be no control, and I was not saying where I was going. And of course, it's very likely that the whole my plans, my conversations were being monitored anyway. But the point was that the jig was up. Um, and so I just did my best to kind of step around those conversations and not get involved. And I was like, I just have to get to my destination. And it really helped to have my friend on the phone, because when your memory is glitching and you're suffering through these amnesic loops, you need to have somebody there who can help keep you present, you know, and hear what's going on, right? And so now I have recorded evidence, which I really hope I'll get to share someday, where you can hear me, my friend on the phone, and the things that were happening as my programming was being activated, because it was incredibly illuminating and alarming, but yet I had the peace of knowing that I had received the answer of prayer that I had asked for, that I was just, and that time that I was there, I'm still grateful for it. I don't have regrets for the time that I had at this place. It was where God had brought me. He actually even told me on my way there, he said, "You're going to see things that might be alarming to you, um, but just trust me, that I have put restraints in order, and I am inviting them out of the network as well." And so he had brought me, like a lot of disciples in the Bible or apostles that are sent from place to place with a message. And that message that I was brought to share was count the cost. Yeah, I've lost. Yeah, I'm suffering, because I chose to walk out of darkness and into the marvelous light of my Savior and into truth. Um, and I lost my train of thought.
No, I think you were actually finishing your train of thought
Yeah.
with, talking about going there and knowing that God is telling you
Mhm.
things will be revealed,
Right.
and you went in there at least with some level of discernment of like, this is a teaching for me. It's not my final destination. It's a path that I'm still going to be on. It might be rocky. It might not be, but I need to be aware
Mhm.
of what's going
It
on
was
because
a
I'm here.
transition. Thank
Yeah.
you. It was a transition and it was a mercy. It was a mercy as well that was extended to these people in the network that I was sent to because um they need to know the truth. They need to know the truth that they are under mind control. And I did my best to open their eyes to that in all kinds of ways. I tried to do it with a sense of humor. I tried to do it in a gentle moment. I tried in all kinds of ways. But it seemed like there was a willingness to explore that as a possibility. But I realized ultimately, I think that was just a show. Like, it was just acting. I think they were just kind of acting to kind of make me feel that way. But they ultimately, decided not to come. And when, yeah, there was a lot of interesting things that happened.
That's a really, eye-opening story that something like that could happen, especially from a ministry that's preaching that they help people, and to hear it really goes into the theme of what we know about some of these charities and these organizations that say that they're going to do good, even down to psych wards, places that society thinks is helpful, and the different darknesses that can lurk behind the scenes with vulnerable people who, like you said, have a void and are just reaching out for help, looking for somebody to help. And something that looks really good on the outside doesn't always mean that on the inside it's operating in the light. There's a lot of darkness that lurks behind goodwill and charity, as we know from, all these different testimonies. But this is just another example of, the horrors that can be behind something that looks so good on the outside.
Yes, and thank you for saying that because the scary thing about the person who asked me if I wanted them to help me register for medically assisted suicide, she is now embarking on a counseling certificate to help other survivors. There's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of stuff that's not going to be fun for me to expose, that I'm in the position to do that, and I'm going to be in the position to do that. I have been in the position to do that, in order to help keep others safe. Um, and when I one of the things I was trained to do is run diagnostics on people and profile and do a reconnaissance of their family, their community, their living situation, just their whole web that they're in. Um, and I do a lot of assessment instinctively because I was trained to do this through my father, who is a internationally renowned programmer, to basically learn through people's micro expressions, their inflections. I know how to test people to look for things, and so I was doing that the whole year and a half I was there. Um, and I even was right. I developed a blueprint that even gave specifics of the logistics of who was handling who in that family and in that network, the particulars of their operatives in the neighborhood, as well as going all the way back to the 90s, including some of my own childhood memories with these people. And so I kind of was like, I had been kind of developing this so that I could show them at the right time when I thought that they might be receptive, knowing that that was going to possibly create a big problem. But I also know ultimately that that's why I was brought to this look. That's what I was brought there to do, as a loving kindness to bring them to repentance. And this person accused me of um, having a lesbian crush on one of their daughters. um, and that me even suggesting this is an attempt by one of my altars to sabotage my experience healing there and to destroy their family.
What?
Um, this person said, I'm just saying this because I'm jealous because I've lost everything. My life has fallen apart and I'm suffering, and they are having a fruitful whitewashed veneer life. That's what was told to me. And I was just like, wow, this is like, I'm who am I speaking with right now? It was just, I was actually astonished. But I was really grateful that the mask had come off so that I could see what was underneath. And I don't argue with the enemy. I just respectfully, bid him adieu and carry on. But it is my job to reveal the truth as I see it, and in wisdom at the right time. And who knows, maybe there will be a change of heart at some point in the future, but it was not while I was there.
Absolutely horrific. Were the things you were reporting, were they then reporting to people in your network that you had left?
I don't know for sure, but I believe so. I believe so because of it was very obvious to me that there were modalities being used pertaining to neurolinguistic programming. And neurolinguistic programming is used by a lot of counselors for positive use, right? As well. But these uses were nefarious. And so I think, yeah, it's possible. And the whole thing was just a big show for me. Um, I think, yeah, so what I was saying before is there was obviously some already know-how on mind control and programming within this family. But I believe that there were some tips given, likely from my father, who was my programmer, um, who's been completely silent since I left the network. I haven't heard a peep from him. He's not spoken to anyone. But I know he's not doing nothing about it, because he's connected to a lot of really powerful people. A lot of people, over even in at the World Economic Forum. Um, I was taken to a business school called IMD in Lausanne, Switzerland, for some programming, for some rituals, and to be trafficked in Switzerland. And a lot of these individuals are people who are engaging in a part of Davos, and like I said, the World Economic Forum. And so he would have not been doing nothing. And I had kind of been wondering what he was up to. It was obvious that I think he was probably feeding things to those around me in order to keep me sick and prevent me from remembering.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I know what you're talking about is really difficult. You're showing your face today, and in previous episodes, you hadn't revealed this family member that was
Hmm.
part of your programming. And I appreciate you sharing that. I know that this stuff just has to be so horrible to talk about. And even people that you loved going to a ministry that you reached out and connected with, and they reached out and connected with, and just the different ways that they target survivors one way or another, whether it's directly from the network, like a father figure, or somebody else from the actual family coming in and squeezing in and trying to find ways to keep tabs and to target and, to ultimately try to get you back. Or simply, even if let's just say this organization is not connected to your family or this network that you had left. You know, the fact that you can walk into somewhere like this and try to get help, and then these people are using techniques to trigger and activate you when you're just simply looking for refuge and a place to mourn and a place to process what you just left. You know, it's just horrific that people could do that to somebody in need in that way, you know, but you just see how the abuse, it doesn't stop. Like, it follows you, and you learn along the way the different ways that it manifests after, how the abuse evolves, how targeting works, you know, and the different ways that they can sneak into your life, even like you said, arranging potential people to meet, which to me, I think it's interesting. I interviewed a girl. The person she is currently dating was a part of her, I don't know if it was her direct network, but also part of a cult system. And the two cults, or the one network, however they were introduced, she was meant to meet this guy, and they were meant to fall in love, and they were supposed to be doing really nefarious things together. And they both figured this out while they were together, and ended up staying together, and they overrode the programming that they were supposed to be doing these evil things. And now they're out there doing podcasts and like exposing it. And I'm like, you know, in a way, it's really dangerous for them to try to do this to survivors who are healing, because you guys have literally been the ones to break every single barrier. And it's like, they really think that they're going to fool you again. They might momentarily, but like, it's not going to work. Like, they're just exposing themselves, you know, further. This is exactly what you've been testifying, you know, probably since way before you ever came public, is the fact that they're going to come after you and target you, and they're going to sneak in, and they're doing all these things, and they just prove you right by what they're doing.
I know. Every
You know?
time. Every time. You're so right. And you just end up leveling up, right?
Yes.
Like I said, I questioned, you know, the answer to my prayer. I'm like, wow, what is the likelihood? You know, God is a God of miracles. Now that I've reconnected with this friend I wanted to connect with, and I'm thinking, and he's also thinking, like, are we just entering into the next phase of the program? You know, because we weren't able to, like, same thing with those two people you were saying, they were slated to to work, continue doing network business, or do really dark things together, who knows, end up in prison. There could be a double homicide or suicide homicide, all of these things that can be triggered, right? And so, yeah, that's absolutely like a possibility, but that's also still the answer to the prayer. That's still the answer to my prayer, you know? And it's kind of like what Joseph said in the Bible after his family sold him to slavery. Actually, I think I have it written down here. He said, "Do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." And so that's what he does, where the enemy thinks whatever the enemy thinks he's doing, like if we're walking in obedience to God, if we are covered in the blood of the Lamb and we're walking in the power of his resurrection and in faith, he is going to use what the enemy means for evil for good. And so it doesn't matter in the end whether or not I was reunited with the survivor from the program by the network, or if I was reunited with him for the purposes of Yah, because ultimately the purposes of his kingdom are prevailing. And we are deprogramming, like, at a miraculous rate. And so I'm not discouraged when I experience setbacks in my health. Like, you know, this week I've been dealing with a lot of cluster seizures. And um, that creates blindness. It's like a strobe light in my head. It affects my ability to use my motor skills. Sometimes I can do nothing but lay in bed for 3 days because my muscles have seized up so severely, or I'm blinded by the flickering light. And those are called you know, I'm not going to go into the type of seizure, but I spent years trying to get help for those, and I couldn't. So they've been bad. They've been worse lately. but I notice the pattern is because memories are coming in, right? And so whenever you're doing something in defiance to the programming, there's going to be um, what's known in a lot of like Eastern medicine or Eastern philosophy as the suffering of change, or like a healing crisis. And so there's a big difference between being set back because you're being triggered by programming cues and codes by handlers around you, and being triggered because you're overcoming and crossing a threshold that will produce long lasting growth, healing, and change. And I really have to say, I just rely on the Holy Spirit to be able to discern the difference, His word, and then the fruit that comes out of those experiences.
100%. That's all you can do. And I think, whenever you are in the process of deprogramming and remembering, and then the cults are trying to do these things, if that's what they did, this could have been a divine intervention and, completely outside of the cult network. And they're probably not going to be very happy that this divine intervention happened organically, but if it was a setup through them, doing it with people who are deprogramming, it's basically like, taking a weapon and aiming it back at themselves, and that might work on people who have no awareness of their programming. You can just kind of keep them in that straight line that you kept them in. But I think there's a lot of power happening now with them trying old tactics, that might have worked while you were still in the network, whether it's you or somebody else, but because we have the ability now to connect online, we have information out there through therapists and other survivors on programming. We have survivors like you who were around programming so much growing up and can educate on it, and who have that knowledge inside that you can recall for yourself and, sort of apply it to your own life. There's so many resources and tools now that we have too, that make some of this easier, even if it's not, an immediate fix right in the beginning and something that we can figure out right away. There's so many more ways to troubleshoot these scenarios now that didn't exist years ago, which is amazing. And it's incredible the ways that you've continued to do this despite losing everything, more than once, and having all these different obstacles and all this opposition coming at you, that you're able to somehow still stay grounded and focused and assess a situation that you're in that can seem completely organic, or can seem like there's nothing, out of the ordinary that's wrong, sort of, and be able to figure out what's behind the veil that's been sitting there the whole time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and it's hard to expose some of those things, because a lot of these things, like, we have a lot of parts who still love these people, right?
Yeah.
And we want to forgive them and we want to see them coming out, but oh, it's so important to illuminate this trap, because those who pretend to love us, or maybe on some level do, but those who pretend to love and support us are worse, really truly are more dangerous. Um, and that's why that's why Yeshua was so strict, um, against those who pretended to be righteous in the Bible, above and beyond the sinner. He rebuked the Pharisees. And so this, like I had said, this void or this vacuum had been created in my life. And then I was given this sparkling new life, new family. They're still walking through hellfire in terms of the booby trap programming that was put into my body, in terms of grieving, um, over just what has happened, the loss of my children, yada, yada, yada. Um, but like, this person, these people, like one of them, like he called him, you mentioned this a minute ago. So I'm going to tell you that this happened to me specifically. Like, he called himself my dad. Which is, and like, we would joke together, like, almost how weird that was, because I'm almost 40. But I have young parts, right? I have child parts. And he was functioning as a handler. He handled everything. After I first got there, he was the receiver of a lot of things that were coming my way that I did need to be protected from. But as he was protecting me, he was, keeping stuff, like even like my documents, like my legal papers, like all of those things were being so closely handled still, even down to my bank account, because when you're seizing or when you're sick and you can't function, and you're having an amnesic barrier, you can't do things like go grocery shopping, um, or, set up a bank account. Things that I am capable of doing when programming is being triggered, it's just not. So I had these saviors, right, that swooped in. One that called himself like my new dad. He set me up with a podcast, gave me a microphone, taught me how to edit equipment. Super hard stuff to learn and accomplish and work through in the condition that I was in, but I was really proud of it. I was really proud of the first airing of my testimony online. I had a new purpose, a new mission with this podcast. Um, he complimented my voice, brought me into the recording studio, like all of these different things, right? Used, loved the song. And again, I don't even believe that any of this is true now. I think it was all just probably lip service and a way to fill the void that was created to then continue to have leverage and then continue to perpetuate this programming of like despair and shame when that stuff is ultimately devoured, because it was all taken from me. My even my therapeutic coursework that I was working on to try to recover and heal and learn how to thrive and survive, not just survive but thrive through DID, my journals, like everything was in their hands, and it still is. And that's their kind of like, screw you, for thinking you can just bless us and walk away. They said anybody, they said they would ship my stuff. Of course, that was a lie too. So if there's anybody who lives in the Okanagan in BC, that would be willing to run an errand and ship me some of my things, I would be really grateful for that help. But ultimately, the best I can do is follow the example of Jesus and his disciples and walk on forward, brush off the dust from my feet, and not look back.
I would love if somebody could help with that. And that is just, once again, just such a betrayal to not follow through with something even that simple. Like, that's the least that they could have done after everything, is just give you your stuff. They knew that you walked in without anything, but again, just it's another part of the way that they target you. Like, they don't want you having access to all your stuff and all kinds of things all the time. It's more of an advantage to them if they think that you are closer to being, without anything, and you have to start all over again, and it's going to be stressful. But it's really sad, and it's horrific. It's a crime, these things that are done. Like, nobody should be entitled to be able to have that type of authority or agency to not even ship your own belongings out that you probably worked really hard for, because you started with nothing. All of those things probably meant a lot to you to end up getting. But I really pray and I hope that your fundraiser and between your fundraiser and other ways, that you become abundantly blessed with all the resources and finances that you need. And if your fundraiser is still up, which I believe it is, I'm going to put that in the show notes. And if people want to bless you and to help, let's help you start a new life if there's not a way to get your old stuff back. But if somebody is in that area and wants to reach out, do you have a way that they could do that if somebody would be willing to run that errand for you?
Yes, you can access me on Instagram at the Song of the Lamb. And I also am starting a Telegram channel. I just finished setting it up to for updates. Go into that a little bit as well, but it's by the same name, the Song of the Lamb. And in the past, I had given my last Instagram as my contact, but because in this leg of my exodus, my podcast was taken away because it was a group thing um, with these people. Um, I lost access to my inbox. So the whole community that I have built through the interviews over the last year, it was all going to the quickening. And so I don't have access to that anymore because my phone was also bricked. I was bricked out of my phone without warning. And on Instagram, unfortunately, you could only I used that phone number and there was no way around it. I've just been told, sorry, there's nothing we can do. So I've lost the contact. So I really want to make sure that people can find me at the Song of the Lamb. It's not a shared account, it's just me. And so you can come and say hi there, and we'll just start again.
Good for
We don't
you.
give
I
up.
love how
We don't give
you
up.
just keep going. You keep going and keep going and keep going. I love that. That is like one of the best lessons ever that any of us can learn, is to just keep doing that. There's so many things in life, no matter where you're at in life and no matter what walk of life you're on, there's so many different things that want us to just, sort of give up, and our society's set up that way too. We don't live in an empowering or positive society in a lot of ways. But to just keep getting up and the more that we can encourage each other to do that and the more that we can just keep doing it. For me, even having so many of my platforms terminated, it's such a shame that yours wasn't terminated and you're not being given access to it. However, starting fresh and having full authority and, being able to have your own account and not share it, that's also another really empowering thing too, because they can't do anything about that now. You're not sharing it with somebody who can take it from you. So I love that
Right.
you're starting to do things by yourself. And with that, you can then invite people into your circle instead of initially sharing it with people who might not have the best intentions for you. And the Song of the Lamb, I have her Instagram up. You guys can find her there, and I'll have that in the show notes too. But it pops up really easy. If you just type that in the search bar, it'll bring her account up. And I really encourage you guys to connect with her.
I'll give the Telegram link as well for you
Perfect.
to add, Emma, as well. So thank you. And that's the funny thing, right? With that's the thing about the beauty of DID is it's easy for most of us to just respawn at any given notice. I like to joke though, instead of calling it DID, I call it associated identities in order, because I'm discovering that the holy grail of integration that a lot of us survivors have been pursuing is not always ideal, and it's better that it happens organically, and there's actually a lot of benefits to being a multiple in terms of giftings and skill sets and things like that. And so that's another thing that I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more, probably not in this interview, but in the future. All right. So DID, I always thought that integration was the holy grail in therapy when trying to heal dissociative identity disorder. But I'm discovering more and more that there are so many advantages to it, and that people who have this are brilliant, geniuses, creative, have incredible skill sets, uh, so much grit, so much courage, so much strength, so many abilities come with the ability to dissociate. Yes, it creates dysfunction, but it also creates a lot of ability. And so I say associated identities in order is the ultimate goal, to have unity and harmony within the system, and then integration can happen naturally. But one of the things that I think is so, so key, and I've been chatting with other survivors about this, is I had mentioned earlier how I've been limiting my focus on the darkness pertaining to everything that's happening with satanic ritual abuse and memories and deprogramming. yes, there has to be an element of that. But what's even more powerful is being given a new job, a new task, a new assignment, a new outlet, that is is in accordance with what the person is naturally passionate about and is gifted to do. And a lot of the skills and things that we have learned in the network can now be used for good. And so I want to talk more a little bit and share a little bit more about my story through this process. Um, I've been taking some more unconventional, more. I've been taking unconventional routes to healing that have been really, really helpful. And so I want to share some of those, I think, probably on a future episode. But the amazing thing about having different projects going and uniting as a community of survivors is that we can come together and use those things to create and build something awesome and to help each other. Everything from putting together sting missions, sting operations, to going on exploits, to putting together um, how we can help children who are still in these systems and are still being trafficked, to healing modalities for those of us that are still suffering or are in bondage or struggling to overcome certain behaviors, addictions. There's just so much unused potential, I feel, in the survivor community because it's so easy to remain isolated, and so many of us understandably have trust issues. But it's crucial that we do, because of the things that are coming with the Black Awakening. There will be literal blackouts. We need to be able to find ways to stay connected and build in the midst of it. And so that's why I am heralding a call and a rallying cry to connect with me on Instagram at the Song of the Lamb, on Telegram at t.me/the Song of the Lamb. And again, the link will be below. I'm going to leave those as the only two contact points for now. We're looking for just putting together a really colorful team: lawyers, doctors, nurses, artists, community organizers, poets. Everybody has something to offer. And if you're not sure, that you do, or but you just want to be involved, whether you're a survivor or someone who just wants to help support this community and advocate against human trafficking, just connect with me, because so many amazing, brilliant things are happening as I connect with other survivors in like these little sparks, right? Like conversations like between you and me, or me with somebody else. But like if we have a group of us all together, um, I'm so excited. There's so much going on. I can't go into it all. There's so much going on. Some of the information is still really sensitive, but I want to be really actually very thorough and generous about sharing all of it with you regarding what's going on with me. My friend here who was in the CIA programs with me. So like just connect with me and we're going to go from there.
You're so right. And like, it's really neat in this process for me getting to hear, and I think anybody listening, getting to know your backstory and, sort of studying that so furiously and presenting it and helping you share it. On the other end of that, though, there's this incredible other testimony on the other side of remembering and healing and taking back the power that you were all given, as children and as young adults, that they knew that you had, from your high IQs to your spiritual gifts to all the skills that they just relentlessly, bore into you ever since you were very little. It was a very militant type lifestyle that was happening in the dark, after going to school and, being a normal child on the front cover. In the background, there was so much training and conditioning happening, and all of you have these incredible gifts. And like you said, dissociation, it's looked at mainstream either in disbelief and with misunderstanding, or simply, not understanding that it's not actually a disorder at all. It is a response mechanism, and it can be very advantageous when somebody learns how to manage it, and gets through, how you were saying, sort of the chaos of discovering you have a system and getting all parts to be able to cooperate in a fashion that's beneficial for the whole body, instead of, sort of this chaos that can be very debilitating and can be very, very destabilizing and put somebody in distress, but on the other side of that, and I love too that you brought up integration, how that's sort of traditionally been what has been preached, is that you're not healed until this happens. And I couldn't agree more with you. I'm seeing more and more survivors learning how to not only heal parts, but bring them together. And how do we share the skills inside, together? How do we create teams of parts that can work together and share information and find ways that we can utilize all these skills that we were taught growing up to be beneficial in the real world that we live in today, outside of the network ways that you were, forced to use those things growing up. Now you get to decide what you use them for. And I think that's so cool, like watching you and others become empowered with that, because that came from so much, from unbearing yourself from so much shame and guilt and just all those negative emotions and beliefs that they put on you as you're going through all this training. They never wanted you to be empowered with it. They wanted you to basically give up your agency and let them control these different skills and gifts that you have. And now you guys are all taking this back and being like, wait, I have all these skills, like I can use them for things that I want to now. And how can I do this? How can I use these things to benefit humanity, to benefit survivors? How can I collaborate with other survivors? And it's just so neat. It's really cool process getting to see you go from where you share as a child where you were, and just like the depths of depravity that you were brought up in, to now being this really empowered, confident adult. And I know that it's not just confidence and, rainbows and butterflies all the time. It's a lot of struggle still. There's tons of healing that goes on throughout a whole lifetime. But I think that gives a lot of people hope to see that. And it helps people embrace the things that they were made to shame, and I love that you've come through on the other side with that same mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Well said. I mean, what's the alternative, right? That we continue in despair and hopelessness, and that we give up. And there's times I've been tempted to do that. And I don't condemn anyone for those seasons at all. I mean, I was going through such a bad one, right? That I was like, um, I put myself in a vulnerable position, right? With that whole medically assisted suicide stuff. So, I mean, I get that, but it's all such a lie. It is such a lie, and there's so much more hope. And a lot of us survivors um have gifts where we can see in the spirit. And but we've also been very trained to be very perceptive and hyper vigilant, uh, in a lot of as a necessity, growing up in a traumatic circumstance, but also cultivated as a skill in a lot of these government programs. And the downside of that is you just see a lot of darkness all the time. And I had said to Abba a few years ago, I said to him, I was grateful for the gift of discernment. I was grateful to be able to see into the spiritual realm, to be able to see the brokenness within people and the healing that they need, so that I can reach forward and touch that place in their heart with the love of Christ and his power to heal the brokenhearted. But I also said, I'm weary. Like, I'm weary of seeing all this darkness all the time. Can you give me the ability to see, even more so than the darkness, what it is that your plan and intention is in this horrific circumstance, or within this tragedy, or with this person that is suffering and broken and afflicted? If you can give me eyes to see what you have called them to do, if you can give me eyes to see into your kingdom, how you are redeeming this and how you have already redeemed it by the blood of your son on the cross. If I can give those, if I can have those eyes, then I can impart hope to others and call them into the higher place that God has designed them to be. And through that alone, a lot of the lies, because the programming is constructed around lies, all of it kind of just dissolves and dissipates with time. And so that is what I'm really passionate and desirous to do. My friend and I here, who was also defecting from the program, we're putting together a community as well as a location for survivors to gather and really just receive the healing power of being together in community, especially with other Christ followers. And I think when we are faithful with a little, He gives us much. And so I don't look back in despair about the things that I've lost. I see them as opportunities um, to relinquish what is perishing in order to receive what is imperishable from His kingdom. And so you might have seen behind me, there's a sign that says 906 Pinecrest. So I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not on the run. Um, I am here at this location, and I am going to be sharing on Telegram and giving updates, a few updates elsewhere as to what is progressing here. But we are working on turning this into a place of refuge for a community of survivors. It's an enormous estate. The story of how we have acquired it is for another time, but it's pretty cool. So we're actually doing it. Like, we're actually doing it. We are boots on the ground, and actually doing the thing that we didn't have, right? When we were getting out of the program, we didn't have a place to live. My friend was homeless for 6 months, completely homeless. And it's harder, especially for male survivors, to maybe garner like the sympathy that a woman would get in order to maybe receive a hand of help. Um, there just maybe isn't that level of understanding or grace for men, and that's something that needs to change because we need men at the front of this movement. We need men as much as we need women. We need both. Um, and so yeah,
How
stay
exciting.
tuned.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. I just love, like I said, I just love seeing you step into your power. You know, if I was somebody that was on the other side of where you left, you know, still involved and not doing what you did, which is the right thing, you know, leaving and getting free and trying to help the others on the other side, I'd be terrified of you. And I say that in the best way. Like, I think
Good.
it's amazing. You know, you've turned into, you know, their worst nightmare when all that they ever wanted was to be yours, you know, and they tried so hard to stop you from doing all of this, and you've just overcome all of it. And, you know, I'm sure they're just shaking where they're at, you know, and it's beautiful. It's awesome to see the tables turn finally.
Amen. And wait till they see the whole team develop, because we are becoming a force to be reckoned with. I'll say that. But I want to be available. We want to be available to connect with other survivors who have needs. um, it's so important that survivors just aren't alone, and they're not going to the running to controlled opposition um, in times of desperation. And so we're here for that, but we need others. We need others who have their different gifts, their different assets, their ideas, their inventions, so we can work together and come up with keys and modalities for healing. Um, and help each other overcome the obstacles that are in the way. Christ said, let us carry one another's burdens in love, and therefore fulfill the law of Christ. And so it's quite simple, and it's a beautiful commission.
Kadaya's coming for y'all. I'd be scared if I was
I'm
you.
coming.
We're done. We're
I'm
done. Your
coming.
time is up. Come over to this side with us.
Well, there's something too, like, as much as I'm so grateful for podcasts and platforms, um, if we don't know how to get to each other physically, we're gonna regret it in these years that are coming. And another thing too is, like, touch is such an important part of healing that I don't hear enough people talk about. When I've been thinking about this since I was on the plane after my year and a half of overcoming the shock of losing everything in my life, including my children, realizing what has happened to me. I I just wanted somebody to hold me while I grieved. And I knew that alone would bring healing. For somebody, just the human touch, someone to just hug me and hold me while I grieve for the loss of my children, or to hug me and hold me until those emotions came up. And of course, with anybody, you always want to ask permission to be able to, to touch them. But in a natural, loving community within the body of Christ, touch is such a big part of that, and it's illustrated in the Bible. Whenever someone is healed or raised from the dead, that word raised from the dead is the Greek epipipto. And it's actually it's very intimate, non-sexual touch that imparts the healing power of God's love. And I've been thinking about this since I was on the plane, because I was in a middle seat on one of the 5-hour flights. And there was a man on one side and a woman on the other. And the man's side of the man's leg was touching my leg, and the woman on this side, her thigh was touching this side, and she was kind of almost sleeping on me. And these were strangers, right? But I was like, I just like didn't want to move. Like, I felt like a little child almost. You know what I mean? Like I was so I realized I didn't realize how bereft I was of human touch. I knew I was to a degree, but I wasn't aware of how powerful that is until I was on that airplane and my nervous system completely decompressed, just because I got to feel the bodies of these two strangers just pressed up against mine a little bit. That was comforting. That was soothing. And I just think how many survivors there are out there who were as lonely as I was, and just like in need of that. And it's such a simple thing that we can do. And I think it's why we need to make an effort to physically see each other more, as well as extend that to somebody else who is in need, who is grieving, or is lonely, if that is permissible. I think it's really, really important,
It's a
especially with
human
the
necessity.
yeah. And that's how the Holy Spirit operates so oftenly, is the laying on of hands and by touch.
That's so beautiful. And I love that you guys are facilitating that and taking that into account, because I agree. And even with, let's just even say a therapeutic setting, not that you're touching a therapist, but I think there's a difference being in front of a loving, trusting, good therapist even, and somebody that you can open up to, versus all the online stuff even that we're doing where we're not connecting with each other in the physical. There's so many ways that we are blessed to be able to connect with all different people all over the world this way, the way that we are. But there's something really special about being in the presence of somebody and being able to offer, even if it's just an energetic touch, just being in the same room as somebody and being able to just be there with them, a leg touching, or just being able to talk to somebody and like look in their eyes and engage. there's just something much different about that than like typing a text message or a DM or even talking on Zoom, you know? So like I said, we're so lucky that we have all these ways to connect, but I'm with you. Like, let's use them. Let's use these ways to connect with people all over the world so we can kind of hone in and all come together in one local area.
Yes. Yeah,
And
everybody
speaking
has
of
something
something,
to offer.
totally, yes. And I wanted to just ask, as we're talking about updates and you've brought your children up a couple times,
Mhm.
I wanted to see if you had any updates on them, because I know that that's a huge part of your whole reason for speaking out. It's something that we all pray over you after hearing your testimony, you know, so I wanted to see if there was any updates on them also.
Thank you. I still have not seen them I have not spoken to them for about a year and a half. And yeah, it's excruciatingly difficult. I would like to talk about my strategy legally in regards to them, but I can't do it right now, not during this interview. But how have I been coping um, as a mother without my children? Um, I've actually been coping well by the grace of God. Um, the nights can be long. The floodgates of grief are tumultuous. I bear often the physical affliction of this grief in my body, but I have hope. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I will be reunited with them. I just, I've seen it. Um, and so I hang on to that when I miss them. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't, um, that I don't hold them in prayer, that I don't sing to them and just pray that the Father would just release that song over them and into them, you know, as they sleep. I would tell them that I'm not giving up, that I'm not giving up, and that we've won. We've won, and just to hang on to hope. Yeah.
And I know
Actually,
there's a lot of other mothers out there in a very similar circumstance as you. And I think hearing these words from you is also, you know, not only healing to speak, but very healing for other mothers to hear who are grieving and don't see
mm,
any reason, you know, to look forward to anything anymore. I think there's a lot to fight for, and there's a lot of justice coming. We're in a amazing time right now. It is absolutely devastating and criminal to tear children away from innocent mothers and loving mothers. But we're on this amazing
mhm,
journey and path right now where exposure is coming. And, you know, these children have what you and others don't, a parent on the other side of this ready to bring them in and help them heal from the atrocities that they've gone through, both from being separated from a parent, but also the things that we know that the cults do, you know, to these children.
mhm,
And so it's amazing that they have you to come out to, you know, and they're not going to be alone like you and others are and historically have been. You know, a lot of parents are getting out and fighting for their kids and are ready for them. And I just can't wait for that
mhm.
day that you're reunited with them.
It's going to be a happy day.
It's going to
It's
be
going to
very
be a happy day. And I always pray that they would have more faith than me, that they'd have twice as much faith as me, and that they will have as many awesome stories of the things that Yah has done for
yes.
them in our time apart, that we're going to come together and we're going to just have stories to share. Um, and I look forward to that.
I do
And
too.
that's what gets me through, but I couldn't do it without the strength of my Savior, of my God, who knows what it's like to lose. I mean, he gave up his one and only son so that we could be redeemed, you know. So will he not with him freely give us all things? I believe he's that good. And you mentioned justice, and I wanted to read a little poem I wrote.
Yes. And I did mention in the intro that you are a poet. Some people might not have caught that, but Kadaya has no shortage of poems and writings that she's done. She publishes some of them on her Instagram, some of the shorter ones as captions to go with some of her photos. But it's a really beautiful gift that you have to share, and I'm excited that you're going to share some of it on this episode.
Yeah, thank you for listening. They're mostly pretty short. I just have a few different ones I'll probably read, maybe as other topics come up. But this one, Justice, I had my sons in mind when I wrote this last year. Justice runs down Calvary. I brought my cup. Could it be for me? These bones now talk, those dead now live, to warn of wrath, to sing forgive. The judge has dotted I's and crossed all T's before their clubs could catch this breeze. Yah shines the light on all that's done. He will not tarry. Now, who will come? Justice has been filed away, and now we wait. We stand, we stay. And that poem is called Higher Court.
Absolutely beautiful. I was envisioning you with your children as you were talking about that.
There's another one I wrote that's justice themed. So I hope it's encouragement for those listening. Healing has come for the suffering silenced by traumatic amnesia, the trafficker's violence. The longer restraint, the greater the impact. The more carefully loaded, the more balls in the rack. The more collected reveals, the more shock will reveal. The more the arrests, the greater the press. The greater the gobsmack, the more shame compounds. For all of their flack, louder thunder resounds.
Love that. These are so powerful. I love that you're really good at taking like really big thoughts and like compacting them into a shorter version, whether you're speaking it or writing it out. And I think it's just so powerful to hear these words from you. It's very, very empowering. And it's beautiful to see topics like this being a theme. I'm sure, a lot of times in the beginning of healing, whenever you're writing, some of the themes can be a lot darker as you're processing through what you're currently feeling in those moments. And it's also kind of neat to see the evolution of the themes that occur in that processing and in the continuation of writing, how it sort of evolves from this darkness to, these brighter outcomes and outlooks and topics. So I love that you had your children in mind whenever you wrote these, and I know everybody's praying that you get reunited with them ASAP.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Should we look at some of the photos? Do you think there's time? So
Perfect.
This photo. So there's a couple of photos in this album of a brain and a hammer. And there is one of a bunch of my father's brain models that I laid on the floor. I cracked open them all and laid them on the floor in the shape of a cross. And you might have heard in one of my other interviews about when I followed Gideon's instruction in the Old Testament of taking down his father's altar to Baal. I didn't do anything, of course, I didn't light anything on fire. I didn't damage anything. But after I had gotten out of the hospital from my stay in the psych ward, I shared this story about how I took down the idolatry of my family with prayer and physically intended to send this message. So I had gone into my father, who was my programmer's office, while he was out of town, and I wrote him a really beautiful letter full of scriptural truths about the heavy burden of knowledge, about the original sin of forbidden knowledge, and about the greater gift and virtue, which is love. And this was right before I came into the full awareness that I was a programmed multiple, that I was under mind control. At this point, I had just become aware of cult activity and um, Masonic influence in both my family of origin and my husband's family. And so after I got out of the hospital, I don't know. If I think there are a lot of other survivors like me. We just have a tendency to do a lot of spooky shit. And so I just like went in his office and I put all his brain models in the shape of a cross and I left him that letter. And I was actually planning to leave that night to a women's shelter. Okay, there's the photo. Thank you. So I did this on his floor. That was my statement. And I was on my way to a women's shelter. Turned out I couldn't that my ride bailed on me that was supposed to take me there. So I ended up having to stay. And before my father came home to discover this, now he's very, very ornery and very OCD, especially about his things and especially about his office. But I really did this in as a respectful way as I could without damaging anything. I just, put it in a way where he could put it all back. But I wanted it to have an impact. I wanted it to kind of startle him at first. Um, because that was part of my healing too, right? Is overcoming the fear that I had as a little girl tiptoeing through his office, not touching or any of his belongings. But I had written him a letter of essentially inviting him out of this. Um, is what he does for his career, but there are nefarious purposes with it in the background. And I'm taking a long time to get to the point, but the point was that, hang on, what was it? So this was part of my healing process. My mother, though, discovered that I had done this in my father's office, and she got scared and put it all back before he came home and was actually able to see it. Um, and she was like shaking when she saw it, because she didn't want to deal with his wrath. And I said, Mom, it's okay. I know this looks weird. I know I just got out of the psych ward, but I need to do this. And this is for you as much as it is for me, and you know it. And she knew what I was talking about. She knew exactly what I meant. The bondage that was over our family. And she, but she still put it all back. And this was a warning from the Most High God. And you don't erase a warning from the Most High. I was very calm. I was very, very sober minded, not mentally ill. If you listen to the podcast episode where I talk about that, you'll understand what happened there. But she put it all away, so he never saw it. And I said, well, can you at least leave the letter on his desk that I had handwritten? And she said, yes. But I saw later that she had removed that too. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll communicate this to him in another way at another time. And then you see the other photo, that brain model with the hammer next to it. I smashed that thing up the week behind the week that I realized that I was a victim of mind control. And that was a brain model that my father had given me that was on display in my children's room. And so I just beat the heck out of it. I renounced everything attached to me, all of the lies of my whole life. I repented of even my own prideful tendency to idolize intellect over even love, right? The Bible says that knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. And so it felt really good for me to smash that brain. But that brain model was mine. It was already mine, so I had the ability to destroy it.
Were these ones your father's brain models, or where did all these ones come from?
So these are my father's brain models, and they
Gosh.
were around his office. And he's an internationally renowned programmer. He has a TED Talk. Um, and this was my statement to him to lay it down, lay it on the cross, and walk away from falsehood and step into the true religion that God gave his son to die for, so that we could be resurrected and made free. But this is a grave. What you're looking at, these brains, that is a grave. There's nothing but death in um, in this idol of the mind. And I love the mind. I love the brain. It's a wonderful thing that God gave us. But like with so many things in this corrupt and fallen world, it can be turned into an idol and used for evil. And this was the spirit. This was the idol that was over me my entire life. And I felt the heaviness of it very severely. In fact, I'm going to read you a poem, another poem.
Absolutely.
There are corpses in the body, dead bones not brought to life, the stench of which we recognize as discord, fear, and strife. In Christ we are one spirit, unified in battle, hearing in what some think love a covert hiss and rattle. In the meadow lies a snake that mighty God conceals from those who trust in their own take, but to sheep on knees reveals. The mind of Christ is given to those who give up theirs, and not before we understand that he knows wheat from tares. In his own assumption, Peter reasoned Christ, questioning the author, how can a cross give life? The pride of our own thinking boasts in carnal wisdom. Can you smell the stench of incense that cannot reach the kingdom? How docile we've become, our logic so mistaken. We cannot hear when Christ is saying, get behind me, Satan. We cannot serve two masters or sanctify our flesh. God's thoughts are not made ours until we put them straight to death. His higher ways are better, though we think we know what's good. Put upon his altar, letter, fallen minds on which we stood. So when I was looking at different avenues and resources that I might take to heal from systemic abuse, systematic abuse, organized abuse, mind control, whatever you want to call it, DID. I kind of fell back into accumulating resources about neurology because they're good and they are important. But Abba stopped me. I had a slew of books on how to heal and rewire my brain that were a lot like that could have been things I pulled out of my father's library. Now, he had walls, floor to ceiling, the most books on the brain you've ever seen. Spooky to look at. Doesn't read about anything else. And I was kind of like, okay, so I have DID is a brain injury. It's not a mental illness. So I need to learn about the brain in order to heal it. And that's been a helpful path for a lot of people. But Abba stopped me and said, the only way out of this is to abide in my love. And I thought, wow, okay, that's amazing. But I also I'm also like, okay, but I can't control. I don't have as much control, right? Like we want to be able to control things. We want a fast answer. But
Yes.
Christ's yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so I know this is the voice of my Father. And he's saying the only way out of this, Kadaya, is to abide in my love. And he said, I won't, he said, I'm not healing you with the same idol that broke you and enslaved you. And I said, what idol is that? And he said, it's knowledge.
Wow.
And knowledge is a good thing, it's a wonderful thing. But love is so much greater. And that is where the resurrection power of Christ comes to make us new. And I love what one of your former guests said, Kevin Arnett, who's also from BC. He said that he prefers not to use the word healing because healing infers the idea that you're going back to a state that you formerly were in. And I love that. And so that's what this process is really about. It's about becoming transformed. And the only way to truly transform, and if you want to call it heal, that's fine, is in the power of love, in the power of Christ. And his love is exhibited through his body, right? And so to be able to be there for one another, like I mentioned, the importance of touch. So many people have grief to release, but that loop cannot close until the arms of the Father are around them. And he can 100% do that in the spirit without flesh, absolutely. But there's a reason that the body of Christ is called the body of Christ.
I am just blown away by the creativity of some of these sort of inspirations that you get from God and the way that you can take something that, like a feeling that you have, that intuition that you need to do something, and it presents itself in art like this. I mean, how powerful is that
Let me
photo?
call
Like,
it art. I love
it,
that.
it really is though. Like you took something that was so dark in your world, probably like very triggering even to look at the way that they were probably set up in your father's office or wherever he kept them. I mean, in the circumstances that you grew up in, this would be horrifying to see all the time in the home, knowing what your father was involved with. And to make something like this holy and something like so divine and like almost beautiful to look at as like a message that you got from the divine, like I just think this is like so powerful. I wish so badly he would have seen it. Do you know at all, did your mom ever tell him that, hey,
Well,
Kadaya did this thing? And
no,
no.
because she knew he would freak out. Um, and so, yeah, this might be the first he's seeing it. If
And
he's,
I love too that you smashed your brain, the one that was in
yeah.
your children's room. I think you said that you went out and smashed it, and then before it, you took photos that were kind of artistic with it, like showing the before.
Oh, I did.
You
I do.
smashed
I
it.
got. I mean, I do it. If you can't dramatize and romanticize a tragedy and a tribulation, then you're not going to survive it, or with a sense of humor.
Yes,
But
100%. Yes,
I was shaking, but I was shaking when I did these brains.
I
Like
bet.
I was shocked at my response, like what was happening in my body. I was like trembling, I was sweating. But then I just started to sing and praise and worship my Messiah. and peace came over me, and then I was able to finish and sit down writing the letter. But like I was trembling, like I needed to do it. Maybe it was just for me, um, since it was cleaned up before he had gotten home. But that's a, that's
It's a
that was
powerful message.
it was powerful. It was powerful, and I'm
God's
kind of
wrath can
stammering.
be felt in that.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's sad because it's like this was a mercy to invite whenever God, it's his loving kindness that brings us to repentance before his
Yes.
justice has to come and, whoop us into shape. It's first his loving kindness. And that's what this was. And it's such a shame that it was cleaned up because now it's a judgment. It is a judgment um on, unfortunately, my mother for impeding the path and standing in the gate that I was opening for the family to leave that day.
Yes.
And so I leave her with God and her own conscience.
100%. I'm grateful that you took a picture of it before it was taken down, that you have the ability to look at it, and that it's not just gone because your mother put it all the pieces away and took it down. The
Well,
message is still here. It's still, we can still see it. It wasn't actually
yeah.
erased.
She actually took this photo uh to remind me on another day,
No way.
because she always liked to she wanted to, since I was little, I was shown movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. um I was told frequently the horror story. My mom would tell me her horror story of when she went to the psych ward. I was conditioned to fear appearing crazy.
Mm,
Um, and she did this a lot, right? Like it was always, so she collected stuff like this, right? To be able to use against me later, because it was my mom that actually spearheaded the initiative to take my children away.
oh,
So she was the ringleader of that. And she, like everything from the divorce, everything my husband, he's just like a robot, doing somebody else's bidding. Everything's coming, excuse me, everything's coming from her address. And she wanted me to know that she was behind the divorce, the loss of my marriage, the loss of my children's house. It was like that's just between me and my now ex-husband, right? But you know she wanted me to know that she was behind it because she had threatened me for a long time that I would be framed as crazy or delusional. So she took this photo, right, just to use later against me. But now I get to just share it as a testimony of God's
you
amazing grace
do.
in my life.
I'm actually very grateful she took this picture. The reason I believe it was taken, I believe the spirit of the Holy Spirit was within her too to take this, and this is being used still in the way that you wanted it to be used, which is a divine intervention and a message. She kept the message eternal, even though she tried to invert it against you. We get to now look at it in the way that it was intended to be looked at, and we have photo evidence of it and the story that went behind it. So I'm grateful she took the picture, and I think this is incredible that you were inspired to create this. I mean, it's just like such a creative way to send such a powerful message to your family using these models the way that you did.
Mhm. I pray and prophesy in a lot of really creative ways according to the leading of the Spirit. And I am very childlike, and maybe that's because I have child, parts. But he has been so faithful to honor those things.
Okay, let's since we're sort of showing your creative side, why don't we bring this one up first, and maybe you could share this, because I thought this was really interesting.
It was just a drawing by my son of Jesus, of
Oh,
Yeshua. Yeah, and he has a sword. He always draws him with a sword, and he's looking forward. So this is his profile, which is
How
why
old
he
was he when he drew
only has
this?
one eye. I believe he was 9. Yeah,
Wow.
and this was kind of right before um I was thrown out of my home. But I just thought it was sweet. I wanted to share it, and he said that that was Yeshua, and that was him as a little baby, um, just beneath him, and then that little swirly thing near the feet of Jesus is the Holy Spirit, um, coming to feel him as a baby. He said, and so I just wanted to share this because this is the sort of thing that helps me cope with the, I won't say loss of my children, the temporary separation between us. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're surrounded by angels, and yeah, I just thought it was cute.
They have an
I'm a
angel
proud
of their
mama.
mother too. Yes. And I can see your artistic and creative abilities got passed down. It's a really cute photo and a very sweet way to sort of showcase your children.
Mhm.
I love that he carries the Holy Spirit with him too, and was able to draw this out. That's very, very sweet. And I really am grateful that you shared that today too. I'll bring this up, and then if you want me to switch it, I can.
Yes, this
I just want to
is.
note too, before we talk about, I'm sure that there's sort of a darkness behind this, but you are absolutely stunning. You
Oh,
are
thank you.
absolutely beautiful. You are right now too. It's amazing to see you all dressed up, and you look absolutely stunning in these photos. So I'll let you share about them.
Well, thank you. It was my wedding day. And I was trafficked all over the world. And so I had to be in good shape. Um, my beauty was an asset at this time in my life and at this age. But this was our wedding day. I never These masks, these eyes wide shut Illuminati masks were not my idea. They were just brought and orchestrated by the network to be a part of our photo shoot. These ended up actually in a magazine. But you can see like there's just darkness, right? There's darkness, and this is what we were involved in. I have been at those rituals like in movies like Eyes Wide Shut. um and so it is real, and it is evil, but I, at this time when these photos were being taken, my front part, the part that was conscious that day and most of the time was completely unaware of what these masks were actually symbolizing and signifying, which is the satanic ritual abuse and the mask of the fracturing of people's identities that comes about as a result of this.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
this was the photographer's idea to incorporate this.
It may have been the photographers, or it may have been my former family.
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, you're absolutely stunning, and these photos turned out just, I mean, they're very beautiful. It is
Hmm.
fascinating though. I see people a lot too. I think a bad habit that a lot of us are in are looking at magazine photos or photos professionally taken even by celebrities that have similar iconography, and we immediately judge or assume without realizing sort of that behind these masks, behind the beauty, lurks not only a darkness but a victimization, and behind that smile was so much torment and so much horror that was happening. But you'd never know because it's so glamorous how they present the darkness, and they of course put light behind it. And so it's fascinating just to get sort of a kind of the backstory on some of this, because if you didn't realize the family that you came from or the life that you were living at the time, you'd never guess anything dark about these photos necessarily, even if they gave sort of that mysterious dark feeling. You'd attribute it to the way that the photos were taken and that it was sort of meant to be that way, but there literally is a darkness lurking behind all of this, and it's just a fascinating, it's fascinating to hear your story behind it and how that wasn't something that you had chosen, but it ended up in there anyways.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah.
That was really, wherever you were too, it was really beautiful. Back in
Yeah. I was
these woods
married at
was.
I was married at my parents' home, so that was in their backyard.
Oh, really?
My parents are incredibly wealthy. Um, so yeah, I have very big enemies. Um, and so I'm incredibly grateful for all of you who have rallied in support around me and have assisted me and have helped me. But man, my God is bigger, and he is providing. He's majorly providing.
He is, yes. I thought maybe we'd bring this up and then I'll load the other photos that you provided up and
Okay.
then we can go through those.
This is an exchange between me and the pastor of my church who encouraged me uh, eh, to accept my lot after the hospital stay, which would be a 6 week stay at my programmer's house, my mother and father's house. Um, and I shared this with a friend, first friend of mine in the church, and this is what happened to her in order to send a message to me.
Oh my gosh. And if you're
Yeah.
listening and not watching, um, this is horrific. There's
Mm-hmm.
been
So,
obvious violence to the person she's talking about.
yeah. Yep. So you can see, so
Oh my
um
gosh.
I had shared a warning about satanic ritual abuse in the church on my Instagram, and my pastor, the same one I went to help with, and said, I need help. I'm sick. I'm afraid of my husband, but I've lost my memory and I don't know why. Can you pray for me? Can you pray for us? I need deliverance. And I was just sent to be, I was just sent back to, there was no help given. And this is a common story with the women who are being abused in the church. Pastors do not help, they do not believe them.
Yes.
Um, and so I had made a friend in the church. She was almost 60 years old. And this is what happened to her. When I told her my family is, I used it as basic language as I could because I wasn't sure if she was familiar with the intricacies and the nuances of the different factions within the network. So I just said my family's in the Illuminati. I grew up in it. I've been under mind control. I'm enrolling in a healing program. Um, and I haven't told anyone this. Um, and
Oh my gosh.
I said to her, I see a lot of signs that have you may be recovering, or that you may need the same thing, some similar things have happened to you. And I explained to her why. It was very evident to me that she was being drugged,
Oh,
with something unbeknownst to her and her living situation. It was very clear she was living with her former husband who was older, but she couldn't she couldn't leave him because he was looking after her with her health issues. Similar story to mine, right? You get so sick, you can't help yourself. You're hooped, right? And so after I share this with her, and I share with her some of the curriculum and like ask her if she, like needs help, she sends me a message and she says this is what happened to her and she was in the hospital. And I said, what happened? She says, I don't really remember, but I was told that I fell down the stairs at my house. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I didn't say this. I'm just thinking in my mind, like, you fell down the stairs. Look at your face. Like,
Right.
she had to be helicoptered to a to a Harborview in Seattle, I think it was. She had to be helicoptered in because they thought she was going to need facial reconstruction surgery because her orbital bone was broken. And I'm like, that's not falling down the stairs, but like clearly this woman, there's like I couldn't help her because to help her, it seemed, right? Like I was sent a message, okay, message received. I don't want this woman to die. Um and so I was in a really tricky predicament, right? And so I just reported, I got really angry. And I had shared with her, asked her if I could share these photos. Back then, she gave me permission because she was also in and out of dissociative states and switches. So sometimes she didn't remember, and sometimes she did. And so it says in the text message, if you can't read it, this is what happened to the other person. We are trying to as we are exposing what is happening at churches like this. I said I will not be back. And so I can't really fully see the screen, but that's basically the gist of what I said. Because he was sending me messages in my Instagram because he was hating what I was posting, and it wasn't against him. It was just like, you know, hey, here's a story of satanic ritual abuse within a church, and he warned me to stop, um, because it was all lies. And so to me that exposed him because
Yes.
why was it so personal to him? It wouldn't have anything to do with him. Um, and so again, and they just we have to follow the wisdom of we have to follow the voice of God and his Holy Spirit, because if we're trying to get out, we're trying to get someone else out and it's not their time yet, they can, they don't have a safe path of escape. This is what can happen. So I don't want to scare anybody, but I just want to say, like, um just always pray, is this something, God, that you want me to do or that you want me to share with this person?
That is so horrific. A 60-year-old woman, and then still not
Mhm.
aware that she was being, used, activated, accessed, even under
Mhm.
mind control. The way that this affects somebody for their entire life, and that so many people sort of, they take this to the grave without even realizing what happened to them. Or by the time they do realize, they're so old and far along in their life that they don't even want to deal with it or don't even know where to start. And I mean, what a way to just rob somebody of their life, and this poor woman just trying to, be there for you and somebody that you confided in. I mean, those photos are horrific to look at.
Mhm.
And just
Mhm.
to think that this is what they do. They don't care if you're a 60-year-old woman. They don't care if you're a child. They don't care anything to keep their secrets
Mhm.
safe and to keep survivors victimized, to make them scared and fearful. And, ultimately they want you to come back out of fear and to not, continue exposing. So that is extremely revealing for you.
Mhm.
Was this a church that you were a part of? Did you
Yeah.
experience abuse in the church as well as all the other places that you shared?
I have not personally experienced it within this church, but I
Mhm.
recognized signs that it was going on. Um, Especially when I went for help. Um, the way that it all happened, I shared with in another interview, so I won't probably go through the whole thing again. But yeah,
Sure.
I saw signs of it, and I met this friend because I was at the church, and um one day, and at the end they have people available at the front for prayer, and I went up for prayer, and there's the group of the people who were supposed to be praying, waiting for people who needed prayer. I went up and they were just standing in a circle, like talking amongst themselves, younger. And like I wasn't even standing there. And then there was a woman who was crying nearby in on a chair. And so I'm like, oh, I'll just go pray for her. It was just weird that I was not, it was, the whole thing was weird. But so I just introduced myself to this woman as she was crying, and we became fast friends. Um, and then she prayed for me, and then it was a short-lived friendship though, because I had to move away so quickly afterwards. And she, had a fascinating life story. There was a lot of, yeah, like trafficking, stripping, drugs, a lot of hallmarks of mind control. And so, of course, she was living with her former husband and her fully, almost, now fully grown son. Um, and according to her, they both witnessed a spill down the stairs that caused this. And I said to her, my friend, I said, I don't want to scare you, but this was not a fall down the stairs. Somebody beat you very badly. Um, and like I'd like to help you, and I'm praying, and like we can figure this out. But she just went back into, I think, denial, but it didn't seem like a stubborn denial. It really just seemed like programming, where she just started to just lose her memories more and more and more. It's really sad.
That is absolutely horrific. And bless you for, all the ways that you did try to intervene and help. And, it's sad that we can't completely, stop all the things that these people do or even predict them, and I'm sure this was a really devastating time for you to find out that this happened to her. And
Mhm.
I pray for her. I hope she's, getting free herself or staying safe, and
Yes.
healing. That's hard. I mean, I don't even have
Thank
words for
you.
it. Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And I'll bring up some of these other photos. It seems, I'm sure there's stories behind these, but it seems like you also experienced things, possibly against your will while you were pregnant, and have some evidence about with that.
Yeah, so this is what this was a bruise I didn't remember receiving. And it's actually appears to be an injection bruise. And so I just
Mm,
want to give you an example of what it's like to live with DID and wake up with stuff happening to your body. And you're just being gaslit. And you're just like, stuff like this can just happen spontaneously, or oh, but I believe this is an injection bruise. um
oh
yeah.
my goodness. Yeah, that's not just gonna, you don't just wake up with that and it's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like that's a
Yeah.
pretty big bruise. It's not
Yeah.
just like some little thing. You
Yeah.
probably, if it wasn't them doing something, you would have definitely remembered that would have hurt to have gotten that,
Yeah.
whatever it's from.
Yes, and you can actually, and so
Oh, you can bring
this
that one
is,
back.
yeah, go back. So like, I know, you gotta see you gotta see my hot body back when I was back on my wedding day. Now you're gonna see what they did to me when I was no longer a viable asset for trafficking, what they did to my body. But this photo here, just so you know, this is a classic place to do an injection, especially
Mhm.
pertaining to anything to do with hormones, pregnancy, or fertility. It's actually not my stomach, and maybe it looks like that. I cropped it to be as modest as possible, but you're actually looking at the top of my ass.
Yep, the back, hip
So
area.
viewer discretion advised. The other ones are my stomach.
Mhm. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh, that looks like it hurts so bad.
And I want to be kind of give some of these details, because often somebody will give me information or have photos of something that happened to them in the network, the same part of their body. And so that's just why I'm being a little bit more thorough.
100%.
Because I love to read the comments. Um, I love to read the comments. I learn so much from you guys, and so many other pieces come together. But this photo here, so I mentioned I was used as a remote womb for the cult. And so, I was essentially used as like a handmaid. But this pregnancy, you can see the shape of it is a more of a like the days of Noah that the Bible talks about returning in these last days. So I was actually used for a lot of hybridization experiments, non-human entities, and like alien programming. What yeah. So you kind of notice, like you can notice just the shape of my stomach, and also those typical markings are not typical stretch marks. And the time of gestation was really, really short. And I had been to every doctor trying to figure out what was wrong with me, until realized and remembered that I was being used by the government for these different experiments and projects. So if you want to go to the other one, yeah, yeah. And so that's a whole trauma in and of itself, to be continually finding yourself pregnant. I never said to any doctor I feel like I'm pregnant because I know about all of the psychosomatic symptoms of pregnancy development, and there's a lot of weird strange stories out there like this, but they're usually chalked up to being mental, some kind of a psychosis. But this is real. The Bible talks about the days of Noah in Matthew 24. Um, Jude 1 is another really good place to look. The human lust for strange flesh. But this is happening like a sci-fi movie all over the world. It's happening in Antarctica. It's happening in homes. It's happening in hospitals. It's happening in schools. And this happened to me. This began to happen to me in 2020, where it was this degree of a visible pregnancy.
Do you have any idea the type of experimentation, what they were hybridizing in your case specifically?
I remember some kind of octopus like entity. It's very fragmented,
Yeah.
and I'm still exploring this.
Yeah.
But when I arrived to my final destination 3 months ago, um, I had a miscarriage not long after my flight here. Um, and my stomach was about this size. Maybe not quite that big, but it was about that size. And my friend that picked me up did not do well at disguising his alarm, which I actually appreciated. Because when you're being gaslit as if you just have like an intestinal disorder or SIBO or something like that, when you're being gaslit over and over again by even doctors, for someone to just be like, oh my gosh, like what's going on with your stomach, is such a relief. Like you don't care about vanity at that point. You just want to be believed, and you just want to be helped. And so I show up at my location, and this is the first time I've never been around anybody who was accessing me
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. And I start to experience contractions, and I go through a really difficult, um, go through back labor for a couple of days. And my dear friend was like helping me through the whole thing. He was holding the barf bucket. He was um, completely looking after me. While I'm like sitting in the bathtub in my most humiliating form, enduring this. And he's praying, and I'm praying, and we're just worshiping God, because I was given understanding that this was finally ending, even though it was hard. And I didn't share photos or anything of this, but the stuff that came out of me was black, red, brown, and sometimes kind of like a dark orange. And it was really weird because like if if something had collected during this time, like in my underwear, for instance, um, there was something that was like self-assembling inside of my body was eliminating. So there continued to be a line in the middle of the, what do I want to call it? Substance, fluid. Um, like it certainly wasn't like a baby's fetus or anything like that. But it was something that would self-assemble, whether it was on my underwear or whether I like wiped on a paper towel or whether I let something go out into the towel. It it would be in its stained shape, but then something would form a straight line in the middle of it. I still don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a nanotechnology of some sort, but it was really difficult to pass it. And the reason I was passing it is because, well, the power of God, I believe, finally answering this prayer, and then also, um, just not being accessed anymore, um, for these sorts of things. There's a lot of genetic stuff that was done in my bloodline. I believe even with me and the majority of members of my family. And I won't go into detail about this yet, but there are a lot of people, um, who were given even like like the ability to change and adjust a person's sex from birth has become far more advanced than we know. So there are people who are living as the opposite sex that they were born in, but they literally do not know because they are under that much mind control to keep that cognitive dissonance up. But like even the male, like even men are able to carry a baby to gestation now. Men are now able to breastfeed. It's but there's just been a lot of stuff that's done in my family. That's not something that was done to me as far as I know of. But
Mhm.
I do know some that this was done to. And it's a weird thing to not even be able to share this with them, knowing that they're not ready and just waiting for that time and for God to provide that opportunity because it is a really, really serious thing. And I believe requires a lot of documentation, and digging for proof. And wow, an internal punishment program has just been set off as I'm talking about this. And so I just always receive that as like a confirmation. Um, I got a really high pitch. Sometimes I'll get a really high pitch metallic ringing in my head, when I am saying something that goes against protocol, but it's passing now. But I'd like to read a poem about my experience with the remote womb stuff
Okay,
and
absolutely.
getting out of it. Unless you'd like to ask a question first, feel free to
I mean,
interject at
I
any
have a
time.
million questions. I'm
I
just
know.
like, blown away by this. But I obviously want to respect your comfort level, and I think a poem would be a really good way to sort of see how you've processed through some of this and
Mhm.
how it's sort of laid out on paper.
Yeah, sure. And I know I can be long-winded, so interrupt me at any time if
No,
you have a question or want to
we're all here to listen and
interject.
learn from you. So you keep talking.
Well, bless you. So this one's called A Handmaid's Testimony. And I don't know if anyone listening has seen A Handmaid's Tale or has read the book A Handmaid's Tale, but it's a part of the programming. Margaret Atwood wrote books for the government programs in Canada. A lucky little tribute selected by the Queen, who tried to hide in Satan's pride, blood drenched on the beast. I screamed out and in for help, wailing in despair. There are things worse than death, yet still my God is fair. I confided in a poet with with horns I thought were lambs. I'm going to reread that because I confided in a friend with horns I thought were lambs. Finally believed, alas, another Neverland. Dropped at Psyche's steps, Pan's labyrinth, my handler. He heard my gospel and the truth, yet too his heart was hardened. Saved by blood and nail, thanks to the Lamb of God, who healed my voice with stone and scale to smite with staff and rod. Our balsam balm you stole for money from our land. Judah roars to take it, for ours is Gilead. I've left far behind this cult society and all of its dead poets trying to resurrect through me. Handmade for the beast, no pretentious cryptic tale. Yah has the receipts. I'm no longer for sale. The patriarch must fall, they sang. God save the queen. Now, with her own sting of death, a matriarch has been. My king has paid my ransom, his maidservant forever, loved and blessed, adorned and dressed in his white linen righteousness. He's returning with his rod through the eastern gate, whilst they lick the eastern star. Don't tarry, you'll be late. Clefted rocks won't hide you, but I know about a car. Repentance wheels before you, an ark to take you far. So we talked about the Queen, I think, in the last interview about my rendezvous with that entity that we call the Queen. Yeah, and so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in Victoria, but this is, Canada is, I had a vision once about Canada, and Canada was represented by the Queen, and she had the United States on a leash like a dog. And so it's my belief that, you know, the United States is not actually is, it's not the world power that we believe it to be. Everything is kind of going back to the crown, especially when we look at the influence of the Nephilim um, on our government and on this world, and all of the reptilian involvement. But yeah, um, I have reason to believe it's kind of like United States is Canada's bitch, or like the Queen's bitch, right? Where she wants like the all of the attention, it's loud. It attracts a lot of attention, but is being puppeteered by higher powers. And so that's why there are so many Canadians who are actually behind a lot of what's taking place at the White House and with the American broadcast as well. And so I had experiences in my training at the White House, interacting with Obama as well as his family, and was granted what was supposed to be the prestigious opportunity of handling some of his family members. And I actually interacted. Had learned a lot about programming and what had been established through my father. And let me tell you, Obama is like completely like like a robot. He is completely like a robot. How he is handled and the way that he needs to be handled is so close. Um, and I remember thinking, the only thing I kept thinking was how miserable him and Michelle or Big Mike, him how how miserable they seemed like in their lives and in their marriage. Like there was just complete and utter misery. But yeah, like my father wormed his way into the advisory board of the broadcast for what comes out of our television because he knows how people have been programmed. What happens is they put these cues in the news, whether through TV or through our phones, in order to activate certain programming, all the way up to like to benign things, to it just basically inflame somebody about an issue or to get them to choose a political side, but like the awakening of sleeper cells. The awakening of sleeper cells. And so the Black awakening is really like just around the corner where people will be waking up next to strangers that will, like whole families are going to be assassinated and it's going to seem senseless. Uh, but there have been programmed sleeper cells for forming rebellions as well. There's revolutionary sleeper cells. All of this stuff to create havoc and chaos in these years ahead are really truly about to be loosed, and it's going to be mayhem. Like even next year, like martial law. There's just so much that is coming, and so like my father um kind of took me because he was raising me to be like his protege, right? So he took me to a lot of these locations, but I was also his prototype of all of the programming and all of the fancy things that he had trained and conditioned me to do. Everything from handling to uh, sex slavery, um, like I worked in laboratories, I supervised all kinds of stuff. I transported a lot of, like did a lot of smuggling, all kinds of things. And so he would basically take me to, show off it, what I could do, like a monkey clapping her cymbals, but also to train me to follow in his steps. And of course, I didn't do that. And I'm grateful for the mercy and grace of God for any and all, participation that I ever had in this world.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, you just said a lot right there in that thought. Um, One thing I'm curious about, you mentioned your father's influence in sort of popular media of what we see on TV.
Mhm.
What types of things do they do to trigger, or what types of things should survivors be looking out for as far as to avoid or sort of to be able to combat that, I guess?
Mhm. Yeah, and this is where it gets tricky, but also really simple. Because the programming cues and triggers that have been put in, like I wish I knew what they were. I wish I remembered. I don't.
Yeah.
Um, and they're really hard to identify because there are so many and they're timed very, very specifically, right down to
Mhm.
even the songs that are played on the radio at certain times of the week. Like if you're a programmed individual or you're not sure, the only thing we can really do to guard ourselves against this is to like follow Jesus and like cover ourselves, like put on the full armor of God, trust in the blood of the Lamb, and renew our minds with His Word. Because if we renew our minds with His Word, eventually those strongholds are going to crumble and they're going to break. And the suggestions of the enemy are no longer going to have power, right? If we have our shield of faith up, it extinguishes every fiery dart of the enemy. And I had to really settle this in my mind and in my heart, because the people who had access to me before that were handling me when I thought I was being rescued, um, they used a lot of fear, like tried to create a lot of fear in me of the world, that I was just like this kind of like vulnerable person who was just going to be triggered to do something crazy or dangerous or like lose my mind at any second. Um, and it's not that it's not, yeah, there are mind control programs. Like if you know the code and you can turn on someone's Delta programming or code red programming or suicide programming, like, yeah, that's a realistic threat. Um, but like, it's totally nullified by the power of God. It's completely nullified by His Word. Like it doesn't even stand a chance. And so I had to really shake off a lot of like, even just like the infantilization of my parts when I was there. Um, so that I didn't shrink and I didn't continue to hide anymore. And I didn't like feel like I had to run or hide myself from this world, and just trust God. And it is a scary thing to discover because you feel so out of control. You realize you're not even in control of your own body. Um, but I remember he said to me, like, just basically, he said to me actually these words. He said, I will regulate you. Like, don't worry. Like, I am regulating your system now. And we're going to regulate it until, I've fully healed, and I've experienced a lot of healing, but I still have healing to go. So I wish I could say, oh, here's what to do. Um, but I would just spend more time in the Word of God than on in the news media, and and just remember, fear is a liar.
Oh my goodness. That's great advice. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, we've talked before about sort of getting away from secular music, TV, and sort of supporting smaller creators or looking for music and things to watch and entertainment that is more in alignment with the healing process, like how you've shared about 444 hertz and different frequencies versus the toxic secular music that, has been popularized. So I think
Hmm.
too, there's ways that you don't have to give up all that stuff and be fearful every time you turn on your TV or radio. You can look and replace a lot of that stuff with things that are a little healthier and, obviously don't come with the triggers that mainstream popularized music and TV would too. And we
Yeah.
can, people can go listen to your other episodes where you talk more about frequencies and, the toxicity of what's out there. But I appreciate you sharing that, just because I think we just get sort of so used to having TV. Like we know that there's programming in it, but programming that's specific to target
Mhm.
survivors and victims of mind control. I don't think people always realize that that's also embedded. They're more looking at it as an overall, neuro-linguistic programming, things to suggest to
Mhm.
everybody as society. But, survivors too and victims of this have to be very, very careful that they don't fall prey to, this very sophisticated form of triggering that can do it en masse. So I really appreciate you sharing. And, it's important that what you learned from that, that's a pretty big deal that you were around that growing up all the way to the White House level, being a part of sort of the dog and pony show that we see on
Mhm.
TV. Very, very
Yeah.
fascinating and, really sad too. It's sad to hear that he's so roboticized from being programmed, and that, you know, they're just miserable in their life because they were like, you know, the American dream family whenever he was president. And of course, people would still make fun of them. Big Mike, like you said, there was like a separation of people who supported or didn't, you know, but it's really sad just to see how they position these people on TV, sort of like your wedding photos, you know, this like glam and glitz, when behind the scenes there's like this darkness lurking that only certain people see, you know, and that they've been victimized. He's gone through probably the same, you know, scenarios that you did growing up, and that's really sad just to think that they're still in these positions to be used, you know.
I mean, he's been fully possessed and handed over to like the Antichrist, like the Antichrist spirit. But yeah, I mean, it did originate with trauma for him too. Before one of his addresses, I was on his team of handlers that I was with. He actually urinated on himself. But he was in a dissociative state, so guess who got to clean it up? Um,
Oh,
yeah. So like that's what I mean. Like he's like literally like a machine that's like you gotta like maintain, and like he's got buttons basically you have to push, and
the
ways,
computer.
it's yeah, like just super closely handled. And I mean, we kind of see it more obviously with people like Biden, right? When as he was getting older. But no, like Obama's front personality that he can, that can be turned on. You would not suspect what a like slave he actually is. But there's a music video that just came out called "Fall in Line" by Christina Aguilera and Demi Lovato. That's an example of uh, a trigger for the Black Awakening. So you can see that this is starting to be primed for people who are a part of the revolutionary programming side of the Black Awakening through music videos like this. I don't, I'm like, oh, should I even mention this? Do I want people, program people to go in there and have something be triggered? But I think if you're going into it with the context and understanding, like that's already what this is, it's okay. Um, but yeah, the fall in line is a great example of some of the controlled op that is going to be a part of the Black Awakening, and that's why I'm so devoted to my like Bible thumping, because there is a controlled opposition side of this. And the cool thing about scripture is that he showed us where to find it, where the strong delusions are, how to recognize false light from true light. And so it's really important to be aware of. And that's one of the things that me and my friend were building this little team to be able to do, is to kind of like lead people through the second exodus and get more of the skills and the knowledge and the passions and the zeal and the testimonies of others on board too. On the Telegram channel, the Song of the Lamb, I'm not just going to be sharing more intimate details of my story, of things that have happened and things that are happening as they unfold, but other survivors as well.
Regarding the Black Awakening, and obviously we shared some inspiring things for survivors and sort of how they can protect themselves as much as possible. Do you have anything else to add, either to society or any other words to survivors that you want to share regarding this time that we're going into?
I would say if you have any inclination in your heart, if you are not a survivor, to get to know the survivor community, you will be so incredibly blessed. Your faith will be enriched, the stories you will hear, and the people that you will meet will set you on fire for like righteousness, justice, like the ability of like the power of just like love and like just community and the body coming together to heal. um it is it's going to be incredibly rewarding. And so yeah, I just would encourage anybody to just to get involved by following somebody's story like mine, you can follow along the Telegram channel or on Instagram, watch the testimonies online, but just like keep up to date because the survivors are also the first ones that are in the know and that are going to be in the know when it comes to current events, what's about to happen in our nation regarding civil war, for example. There's so much that we have learned from being on the inside and in the underground of these establishments. And we also are very good at discerning and detecting and observing patterns. And so just there's just so many reasons just to stay in touch. So I just encourage that. And any survivors that are listening, come out of the shadows, um, come out into the light, and just take the hand of some other survivors. If you are a believer, ask Abba, trust Abba to keep you safe and to give you discernment. I know so many survivors, and I can relate to this, are so terrified of betrayal and deception because it has happened over and over and over again. But keep going because your people are out there, your people are here, and it is totally God's will to bless those who seek after Him. And I think that's what I would say. I think the remnant is scattered. Um, we have been scattered, and this is also scriptural, but we're finding our way back together now. And that's prophesied in Scripture, the regathering of the remnant, as prophesied in Scripture, to be that city on a hill in these last days, and to be that pillar of God's fire and cloud cover leading the second Exodus and bringing in the harvest of souls into salvation, because ultimately that's what this is all about. It's about setting the captives free and healing the brokenhearted, the shattered mind, the shattered spirit. And so there's a lot of pain and darkness um, in the terrain of satanic ritual abuse and mind control, but there is so much more beauty on the other side of it than you could ever fathom. So don't be afraid. Don't look away. Do not recoil at the testimonies of survivors. They need to be heard. They need to be held. They need to be touched. They need to be brought out of a place of shame and rejection. They need to know that they have not been defiled beyond the point of love and forgiveness. And so we need survivors and non-survivors together, because everybody functions in different capacities and we all have our roles. So please come follow me at the Song of the Lamb, or just come say hi. Send me a direct message, follow the Telegram, send a direct message on Instagram, share your story with me. I would love to hear who you are, where you've come from, if you're a survivor or if you are not a survivor. You have so much value, and you have a story, and you have a testimony, and you have something to offer. So let's stop isolating and let's rally, because shit's about to get real up in here.
Amen. Oh my gosh, that was so powerful and uplifting what you said. And I really love too how you encourage non-survivors to sort of get in the fight. That's always something that is tricky, because I think society, if they're not directly affected, or if they think they're not directly affected by this stuff, they just want to look away. It's too hard for them. They think that these testimonies are just going to tear them apart. And of course they do. It's so incredibly devastating to learn the depths of evil that exist on this planet, and the things that people are capable of doing to other humans, animals, living beings, just the depths of depravity that exists. But I tell people, like, it gives you a purpose. Once you're over that initial devastation, you have something to live for now. You have something to fight for. Your life goes from being this sort of mundane, go to my 9 to 5, come home, have no time for my hobbies, eat, sleep, do it all over again the next day. Now you have something that in your free time you can devote yourself to and you can care about, and it's something bigger than yourself. It like takes you out of sort of the egotistical life that we're sort of conditioned to live. And for me, I sleep better at night knowing that I'm doing something. These stories, I felt worse not doing something than I do hearing about a testimony. And I think a lot of people do. They just wrestle with the responsibility that comes with knowing, but the responsibility is an honor. We should be honored to help fight for children and the vulnerable and people stuck in enslavement and survivors who are trying to have their voice heard. Like, what is more honorable or a better mission than that? And so I really appreciate you encouraging that, because I think if people knew that, I certainly didn't. I thought it would be really hard for me to do all of this. And of course it is, but it gives my life so much more purpose. I can't imagine not doing this now. And like, I will listen to testimonies all day if it means that we're one step closer to helping one person's life be changed, or getting one person out of the cult, or saving the whole world. And I think more people would get more inspiration to keep going and more fight in their life and something to live for if they decided to join. So I'm with you. I encourage survivors to come forward if you're safe to connect with other survivors, especially online, and of course in person if you're able to. And for non-survivors listening, I mean, there's nothing greater to fight for. It is an honor to be able to fight for children and to be able to stand by survivors. And it's just the best mission in the whole entire world. There's nothing more important that you could stand for. So I really appreciate you, Kadaya, helping instill those words of wisdom and empowerment into everybody listening. And for just to sort of cue people listening as well, I know we covered a lot today. We have a little bit more to cover. I plan on having Kadaya on, obviously, as many times as she's willing to come on. And I'm sure a lot of you have questions about some of the topics that we've already talked about. So if you guys could, I'd love if you guys left your questions down in the comment box, and we'll bring Kadaya back on and maybe she can answer some of those questions about the sort of remote womb, the things that happen, that have been occulted that she was talking about today, whether it is the media news or whether it's cult families or, whatever questions you guys have on the topics that we've already talked about today. But one thing that we did want to bring attention to, obviously a lot of survivors and even, people that didn't necessarily grow up in the families that you did, Kadaya, there's a different type of abuse that people incur that's more invisible. It doesn't necessarily leave bruises and scars and physical trauma all the time. And this is gang stalking. The abuse can evolve into things like targeting. And of course, that can come with remote abuse that can be felt physically. But you've experienced a lot of gang stalking in your time having defected, and you have with you today some proof of that and to sort of show what this looks like in a way from a survivor's perspective. So I wanted to make time for you to talk about that.
Awesome. So I've experienced in-person gang stalking, and there has been a degree of it at my new location, but it's not personal. It's like surveillance vehicles, and that sort of thing. And we just kind of laugh at it. But last year I had 23 instances of someone coming around trying to look for me, emails, threats, harassments towards myself as well as towards some others who were trying to help as well. And I'm going to read a couple of examples of this. One thing I have to say too, I just noticed I made a note on here. Um, oh, that's right. So here's what's so fascinating is my mother orchestrates this effort to have my children removed with an endorsement signed, and this isn't even like necessary, but in like a courtroom setting, with both my mother and father-in-law's endorsements, both my brother's names. So their names are all written on the protective order as like, in yes, this mother is dangerous and unsafe and unhealthy for these children. She should not be allowed to return home. She should not be allowed to see them. She should not have access to any money. She should be destitute. And then I get a happy birthday message. Like, just a happy birthday, thinking of you today, or, like, it's so sick to me. That is like psychopathic.
Yes.
Or that's a psychopathic thing to do in the wake of my horror and grief and my worst nightmare coming true. You want
Yes.
to come along and say happy birthday after you've been involved in doing something like that. It's not okay. But I would get a lot of these little, and these aren't even this isn't even part of the gang stalking or harassment that I was counting before, but there's just a lot of also little things, right? So my mother, she sends me a message after after working with my husband to have my children taken away. She sends me a message that says, "My dear daughter, I am in I am in unimaginable pain. No matter what happens, I hope you have peace and are happy." Like, peace, happiness, and a protective order. Like, it's just, but they do this to make you crazy. Like, make you seem like they're being so reasonable and so loving, and you're just this. I gotta pat you on the head. Like, I can't tell you the number of messages that started with "my dear this." Like, that really patronizing, like, really condescending, like, my dear precious niece, for example.
Really
Trying to,
gaslighting. Like
yeah, and I'm
they're
like,
doing like heinous abuse. It might not be coming to your home and like physically abusing you, but even worse, they're taking your children away. I'm sure you'd rather have the former. But then to do
oh,
something like that and then to come back and be like, my dear, it's like
yeah, like, you poor thing, like, yeah, it is. It's a form of gaslighting. It's incredibly disrespectful, and it's really, really evil. And I think
evil. Yeah.
the last one was from one of my aunts, and I responded. I was like, I don't know. I'm two shakes of a lamb's tail from 40 years old, and you're calling me your dear precious niece as if we've ever even had a relationship. So, like, they'll send long distance people in. I got a slideshow from one of my cousins of my childhood photos, and like really bad photos too, to this like sappy song, um asking me to remember, like, and come home. And I'm like, what do you mean come home? I've been prevented legally from being able to return home. Like, what do you guys think? I just up and left my children? And they just do these things and remember who you like. And I'm like, oh, I'm remembering all right. That's why I'm that's
That's
the
the
problem,
problem.
is I do remember. So they send in these little, or they'll send in people like, I don't know. I could just go on, but they clothe themselves in like just checking in, but a lot of them are coming for information, right? So there have, like, if I'm pushing my pennies together trying to figure out if I can afford the laundromat or groceries this week, and you're coming in like to try to uplift me, but and you know what's going on, you know that I'm lacking, but you're just like dangling, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, if you have a conversation with me and you tell me what's going on and you answer my questions, then I'll help you. But when, Jesus in the Bible, for example, when the Good Samaritan helped the man laying in the side of the road, he didn't interview him. He just clothed him. He had been robbed, he was naked, he was hungry, and he took him in. It was like no questions asked. And so a lot of these things, a lot of these are just meant to try to poke at your heartstrings and get information. Like none of it works on me at all. Um, and I don't even miss these people.
But
But
it's
a
even
couple,
like you can see how like even I mean, if somebody had just come out of programming and then they were automatically these things started happening and the person was already feeling crazy for what they were remembering and weren't in a phase of, being as far along in healing as you are, you can also see like how this would literally drive somebody crazy. They just had these extremely horrific things happen to them. And then everybody's acting like it's okay, not just one person in the family, the whole family, everybody sort of that the person was close with is just acting like nothing happened, everything's okay. I mean, how incredibly destabilizing would that be on top of the things that you're remembering, these horrors that you're remembering? And now everybody's just gaslighting like nothing ever happened. Everything's just fine and dandy, my
yeah,
dear,
yeah, happy birthday. We're just waiting for you to come to your senses.
Come
You
home,
know,
come be with us. Like, really, you guys?
like it's like
I have all
what
these
talk,
names on this restraining or protective order. Like,
like talk
you
about
don't want me at
cognitive
home.
dissonance. Like all I did when I got that message from my former mother, I just sent her a picture of the protective order with her next to the envelope it came from with her address on it. Like she lives in Canada and the protective order that's taking my children away, my whole family is in Washington. My children are in Washington, my house is in Washington, but this is coming from her address. Um, but she's like, she's a shadow weaver, right? That's what they do. They have to keep spinning these tales. The amount of novellas that my mother has written is just like it's just witchcraft. Like you just read, like nobody can even read to the end of it because she's just trying to cast a shadow with her many words. And all she has done is make herself look psychotic. But for example, here and I'm not going to say who
Sure.
any of this is from specifically, but I'm going to read you some very specific messages that trickled in throughout my year of trying to recover and recuperate from all of this. I have sent you many texts, and don't worry, I would not expect any reply from a deranged psychopath. And I don't care. I have no interest in hearing any response that could possibly come from your demented existence. I have simply pasted them below so that perhaps you have them on record someday as opposed to simply deleting my texts. You are a sick human. Look what's become of you. Losing your home, jobs, family. I always thought David Koresh and Heaven's Gate were twisted cults, but you take the cake. As I said, the Mansons need a new chair. Look 'em up. You,
Oh
I
my God.
know, I know, I know, I know. Like, these people are
What?
psychopaths. And
Literally.
I'm just like, man, I could grieve over what I lost, but I'm so happy to be free of them. Okay, so let's continue. How about this one? You have single handedly destroyed this family, and you have also lost yours. I have seen and read everything from many sources. If you could only see and feel our hurt, you are beyond evil and sick and selfish and self righteous, and your podcasts have made your family vomit blood.
Are you
To which,
kidding me right now?
no, 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 I'm not kidding you. I've got the proof, I've got the address. And my response to that is if you're vomiting blood, then you probably shouldn't be drinking it. I mean, like they just keep giving themselves away. Okay, let's continue. Got some other good tidbits here.
I
So
hate that
your
I'm laughing right now, but like, what else can you do?
no, you have to laugh. It gets better. Your family doesn't recognize you. Trust me. Lawyers are coming. You haven't seen anything yet. You will be on the news soon. You will be on the news soon. Like, I want to, like in a body bag? Like, what? Like a. We are exercising all remedies. Never underestimate what the determined can do, nor my resources. Your continued defamation, conspiracy, hate speech, and illegal impersonations are criminal, and all the evidence is being compiled with impressive progress. It will all hit you, and you will fall hard. In what world does one wake daily to find the need to spread so much twisted hate and bullshit? And you hide behind a fake name? Who the hell are you? Your your podcasts are nauseating. I had not planned to put this in writing. Thank God you did. I had not planned to put this in writing, but now you have insulted us and there will be consequences. Consequences. I will be in Canada soon. Cease and desist your hate speech and defamation immediately. I strongly suggest you take me seriously. Always consider the extent of my Canadian and U.S. legal and professional resources that I have available to assist in my crusade to stop your insanity from being made public. And these are different messages, by the way. So these are things that have come to me, those linked to help me, and I'm just like collecting,
It's like, who even
right?
talks like this? This is like
I
the
know.
weirdest, like,
A psychopath.
vernacular to use.
A complete psychopath is who.
Total psychopathic.
I'm almost done here. So it
No, I could
says
sit here all day. Keep going.
we have engaged assistance in locating your podcast host to be served a cease and desist order and potential legal action to stop hosting, publishing, and perpetuating your hate speech, impersonation, and defamation and lies. How dare you? How dare you? All in caps lock now. Do not dismiss my words as hollow or without resolve. You have no idea what is happening and what we are doing to bring this shit show of yours down. We have lawyers. You can harbor all the delusional, twisted, and evil thoughts and beliefs that you want. You can live in your hatred and soak in it. Perhaps the Manson family would welcome you since Charles passed, but keep it to yourself. I don't even know what that means. You don't get to spread lies and defame without punishment. You will suffer the consequences the more you post and share. I hope that losing your family was worth your hate and delusion. Look us up one day after your treatment.
This is
So,
so deranged.
I
Like,
know,
so
I know.
deranged. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, but like, if somebody in a family actually is like crazy or losing it a little bit, like,
yeah.
that's such a weird way to like treat somebody, even if that, let's just say you were
Mhm.
crazy, you're not. But like, what a weird way to treat a family member if you think that something's like wrong with them or that they're
I
going
know.
through a hard time or that they're delusional or whatever it is. Like, that in itself is just absolutely horrific to like treat somebody that you're saying is crazy in this way. That's not normal whatsoever.
Mhm.
Secondly, you're not crazy. And so they're just further proving your point by saying and like putting all this in writing. Like, they have all these
I
resources
know.
and they're so sophisticated, but like they're outing themselves on paper. Like,
It's because they have nothing. They have
I
nothing.
know
It's
exactly.
just, it's just, it's ridiculous. They've got absolutely nothing to go off of. Even the
Exactly.
protective
That's all that
order
they
was
can
like a
do is try
ridiculous
to,
reason.
yeah, that's all that they can do is attack your character in some way, hoping that it'll put you in the same sort of shame mindset that they
Yeah.
conditioned you to have growing up. Like they hate that you've overcome that and they're
And they
doing
hate that
everything they can.
yes, and they hate that I don't care what people think. Because
Exactly.
they're in so much bondage to their image and their
Yes.
so they have to so desperately stop me from talking and create and create this web and these shadows of this narrative, to keep people confused and
Yes.
it's just all manipulation. But I thought that was more like and that's sign of my own healing because a year and a half, 2 years ago, that would have this stuff coming in would have been incredibly triggering for me. But now I just laugh and um I just laugh and I just rejoice that I'm free and that is behind me. And though the dogs will bark and chase to try to bring me back under some type of engagement or their own slavery, um, I just will keep on keeping on and it's really nothing to me now. And that's what healing looks like is
Yes.
being able to remain totally unmoved and unshaken. And when we are shaking, to remember that we can rejoice in our weakness if the strength of Christ is resting on us, and we have everything we need. If He's our shepherd, we lack absolutely nothing.
Yes. 100%. That's been like so liberating for me too to like let go of that mindset of like, oh my gosh, what's everybody going to think of me? Because we're so conditioned, especially children like you who grow up in these environments where image literally is everything. It makes or breaks the secret. And so in order to maintain that, like there has to be this like hyper vigilant level of trying to maintain this image at all times, no matter where you're at, what environment you're in. You have to like be perfect in that environment. There's no room for it, or there's consequences. But even in regular society, we're so conditioned to do that. You look at just all the different ways you go to work and you have to be a totally different person than who you are in real life. And then in real life, you get to be a different person than you are at work or wherever.
Mhm.
Like we all have to compartmentalize our personalities in some ways. And it creates this fear, no matter where you're at, of like, I can't be myself unless I'm either at home or just with these couple of people. And it's such a liberation to just like let that go and to just be
Mhm.
yourself everywhere, no matter
It
what, and to
is.
like just not care. And people like that, psychopaths, hate it. They hate it so bad because that is their entire 24 hours a day. That's what everything they do is maintained on. That's the foundation, is like
Yeah.
always maintaining that image and having to and doing whatever it takes to cover up anything that tries to threaten that image. And you are that threat,
Yes.
and so it's interesting how they try to attack that and how you can like feel that desperation of like trying everything that they can. Like they're trying to throw every hammer that they can at you. And I'm sure it just bothers them so bad that you don't cave to it, because they would, that's like what
They
destroys
would.
them. It's like, and it obviously is, they're going through all this effort to send you all this stuff knowing that like you're chipping away at their image with your hammer that they're
Mhm.
throwing at you and you're throwing
Yeah.
it back at them.
I love that. That's so true. And that's just it, right? Like a lie takes maintenance.
Yeah.
It takes maintenance and it takes that amount of exhausting effort and scrambling and fear because it is a lie, but the truth stands on its own. The truth is freedom. And so what a yeah, what a freedom to be able to come out of that. And a lie is also hasty, right? And so that's why they're firing these arrows. They're trying to keep things contained. They've got to maintain the lie, which means containing you. And
Yeah.
that's why everything is so hasty, is because it's built on delusion. But the truth is patient because it completely stands on its own and it needs no defense. And so we just keep playing the long game, and God is so good.
He is. Yeah, you're the leak in their dam that they can't fix, and it's driving them insane. There was a quote that I read somewhat recently, and it said, once you've ruined your reputation, you can live quite freely. And I was like,
Yes.
that's it.
It's so good. Yes. It feels
You
so good,
know,
doesn't it?
it's
Yeah.
liberating. I'm like, I'll be the crazy conspiracy theorist, weirdo person, whatever, that helps other crazy conspiracy theorists.
Yep.
Like, I'm happy with that. I feel better having that title than I did having to have these little fake titles, you know? So
That's right.
it is. It's wonderful. And it's so great to see you be able to smile through that, because I'm sure, like you said, like that's such a big step to overcome that. And a lot of survivors listening are probably dealing with the shame of having that type of gaslighting and gang stalking a family, gaslighting them in mass with these different types of messages, trying to make them feel crazy, you know? And so it's going to hopefully empower some people listening too, to be like, you know what? She's right. Like, I need to just laugh through this. Like, they're so threatened by me that this is what they're doing. They're this petty that they have to send me this crap. They don't have any, they have all these resources and have all these connections, but this is what they're doing with their time, is like sending these weird cryptic messages. Okay. You know, so it just shows that you're wearing on them, you know, the fact that they're giving you so much attention. If you didn't matter and what you were just some weird, crazy liar, they wouldn't invest all this time into trying to shut you up. Like, you obviously are that, like I said, that leak in their dam, you know, and they're frantic trying to keep the water in. It's starting to get out and people are starting to get wet with it, and they're not happy about it. So you go, girl. I think it's an affirmation that you're on the right track, that they've been doing all of this. You know, if you weren't some type of a threat, if what you're doing wasn't making a difference, they wouldn't be investing time, energy, money, you know, into trying to make you stop doing what you're doing. So I'm so proud of you. That's like a badge of honor almost to get those messages.
Thank you, Emma.
Do you have any words of advice for survivors going through that phase of wanting to shut down because they're getting messages like that, or going through the isolation or leaving their family, just to sort of cap off this section of what we're talking about?
Yeah. I would say that those who are on the side of the lie have already lost, and everything they say, everything they come at you with is a lie. It's like they almost don't even exist, right? Because the truth is the opposite of the lie. So if you have agreed with the lie, you are effectively extinguishing yourself. And so my encouragement would be just to remember that, and you know, if you're triggered, it's okay. You're not weak. You are coming out of severe programming. And so it's okay to do what you need to do to limit your exposure to triggers for a time, but don't avoid it indefinitely, because ultimately the way to defeat it is not to step around it, but to walk through it. And let the fear come, let the grief come, let the anger come, and then discover that it has not consumed you on the other side of it. And these new experiences over time will rewire your programming, to recognize that those are just threats, and there's no validity to them. And so that is how we overcome.
I love that. That's so encouraging for people. And like I said, it's so neat seeing you and others who can smile through this and who can stand up and speak authority to the truth, you know, and to do it confidently and without the shame and guilt that you once carried. It's so neat to see, like you said, not just healing, but transformation, you know, becoming who you've always been and getting out of the shadows of who they constantly tried to make you think that you were, you know, all breaking through all that programming like you have. And of course, it's a journey. It's not something that just happens overnight, you know, but it's incredible, you know, what we're capable of overcoming. And there's no better example of that than survivors. You know, survivors should embrace that about themselves, everything that they've already overcome, and to look at what's ahead and know that no matter what's ahead, you can overcome all of it. You know, there's nothing too big for you. It's your abusers and the people that don't have your strength to leave and do what you did that should be worried, and they are, you know. So I'm just really proud of you, Kadaya, and I really appreciate everything that you shared today. I know that this was a lot. I think before we got on, we were like, this might be a shorter episode. And
I always say that. And then I just yammer. But there's so much. There's like so much. I know.
No, you don't.
Probably
You
our
don't
longest
yammer.
one.
This stuff's so new. You know, this isn't like I always use this comparison, but say somebody is learning or listening to a podcast about business, for example. Of course, you could have, you know, a 10-hour course on business, but people know what a business is. They know what a business license is. They know some of the hardships. With this is like literally brand new information that's never been exposed to the public, you know, and even people that know about it only know a little bit. So it's literally like sending a child to preschool and they're learning the alphabet and like trying to write the letter A and the letter B. You know, they're learning everybody's learning everything from scratch here. This is all such new information. So you really have to pour a lot into explaining all of it to know that the person listening is going to get it, you know? So I appreciate you being so detailed and being able to be vulnerable with your personal experience and then the wisdom that you've learned from it to paint the picture that survivors need to know in order to heal and transform themselves. And then also for people like me who this stuff is just totally foreign to where we can start to wrap our minds around it in a way that's productive, you know, and progressive too. So I'm so grateful for you. And like the step that you took today to show your face, to expose more, to laugh in the face of evil, and to, you know, just be so bold in your disclosure. It's beautiful. You're a hero.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening too. Again, I'm just so grateful for those who have tuned in. Truly, truly. Thank you.
You're a beloved guest. I get requests all the time to have you on. People love every minute is gripping and informative whenever you come on. So this is, you know, hopefully just the start of a massive disclosure. We've still just, you know, touched the iceberg on everything that you're doing and that you've gone through. And, you know, all these hours spent are just the beginning. So I can't wait to hear from you again and to have you on and to hopefully have more news. And, you know, I ask everybody to pray for Kadaya to be able to reunite with her babies and to be able to make up for lost time with them, and for evil to be exposed in her family and beyond, and for the captives to be set free, you know, and to even just pray for the people in her family that they choose to make the same decisions that she did. It would be wonderful if families could be reunited through the trauma instead of so divided. It's terrible. You know, and at the same time, if people don't want to come forward, that they are somehow exposed, and, you know, we can just at least put a stop to what they're doing. So if anybody has any questions for Kadaya, if you guys want to connect with her again, her Instagram and her Telegram are under Song of the Lamb, and I am going to have the Song of the Lamb on those two platforms posted below in the show notes. You guys can just go down there and click on it, and it'll take you right to those pages. And I highly encourage you guys to go support her. And Kadaya, I can't wait to hear about the work that you and your friends and your community that you're building are doing. And whenever you get to a place where you can talk more about that and have more to share about it, because it sounds very, very exciting with what you're both exposing and building.
It's big. And yeah, we need others. So yeah, thank you. Come say hi, come learn about it. There's going to be a lot more of a raw perspective on the Telegram for everything that's been happening, everything that's been going on. And so yeah, come check it out.
It's a good platform that doesn't censor. It's an easier platform to share information and to communicate. So I'm really happy you're going on there. So I definitely encourage you guys to go join that and to help get the word out. I'll also have her fundraiser below. Please, if you have it in your heart to contribute, that would mean the world. She did just lose literally everything she walked away from, and she did it for her children and to help educate us on what's going on. Such a courageous move for anybody to be able to do that and to make that decision. That's incredibly hard decision to do. So I really encourage you guys to help support her in rebuilding her life that she currently has, and to help make these dreams come true that she's working on. So I'm going to have our fundraiser linked below as well. I'll have all my contact information. Of course, connect with me wherever you guys can and join our loving live chats every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday evenings at 6 p.m. Central Time on either Rumble or YouTube. We have an amazing community that comes and supports all of these episode premieres. So you guys are the backbone of this podcast, of this movement. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you guys for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.